Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1218 of the War News stream. And we have more big news again today. We've heard explosions in Tehran as an Iran-Israel attack is imminent once again. Also, Zelensky met with NATO officials today and had a very good reaction. And the U.S. has also confirmed Putin's ambition to invade NATO for the first time ever in this new administration. We have very big news to cover, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we'll be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, as we have been able to hear a statement from the President of the United States today inside the Hague in the Netherlands that it appears evident that the Russian Federation is preparing for a greater war across the face of Europe, and the United States and Europe must prepare with all available possible speed to prepare for this conflict that is soon to face us here in the near future. We have also been able to hear that an allegation has been flung by the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland against the Russian Federation for claims of conducting immigration warfare, arming migrants with false credentials and information to be able to allow their entry into the United Kingdom and to possibly cause civil unrest and greater collapse of the British society, government, and culture as a result of some form of directed immigration warfare by the Russian Federation. An incredibly interesting sort of an allegation to levy, considering that it's the second only one in history outside the Polish also making the same claims of immigration warfare against the Republic of Belarus. Outside of that, we have also been able to hear of explosions inside of Tehran today, as we have been able to hear that the unidentified explosions, apparently not caused by airstrikes, have been rocking and destroying significant amounts of buildings throughout the city of Tehran. The exact cause is unknown, but we have been able to hear from the Israelis that there is a large amount of special forces and Mossad operatives inside of the country that were conducting strikes in the past, which leads us to believe that this may be a continuation of Mossad or special forces activities within the capital city. There has also been air defense fire in the northern Iranian city of Rasht, and we've also been able to hear that it appears that more information has come out about the Fordo and Natanz facilities, and it also seems there's been a highly likely candidate for the facility that may have stored the enriched uranium that the Iranians have now hidden, about 400 kilograms of 60% enriched grade uranium, inside of the Pickaxe Mountain complex just to the direct east of the Natanz uranium enrichment plant. We have also been able to hear outside of the Middle Eastern news that the United States of America has released a far greater volume of information and details about Operation Midnight Hammer, letting us get a more in-depth look at the actual air operation that went forward with hitting and largely destroying the Fordo, Isfahan, and Natanz nuclear facilities. We have also been able to hear by the Israelis today, or at least Israeli media outlets, that they are now also claiming that a large amount of radioactive material inside of the Islamic Republic of Iran have been destroyed in the blast, although it does appear that there is still a decent amount at large, hidden somewhere inside of Iran. Outside of that, we have also been able to hear that the Russian Federation will not be attending the upcoming BRICS summit because Putin has warrants. Generally, that's something that you'd hear down here when someone's about to go to a hangout, but generally, it appears that also now applies to the president of the Russian Federation as well. We have also been able to see that Moscow has come under drone attack, at least here in the recent hours, and we've also been able to hear that drone alerts or drone threats have been issued throughout the entirety of Western Russia here within just the past few hours alone, showing that the Ukrainian armed forces are currently in the midst of conducting a significant drone attack against the Russian Federation. While all of that's been going on, Ukrainian armed forces are continuing to hold their lines inside the Pokrovsk front, and while Russian Federation forces are making modest advances in the Velika Novosilka or largely the Zaporizhia plain, it does appear that the Ukrainian armed forces are able to conduct successful defensive efforts on most fronts and are continuing their efforts on trying to push back the Russian Federation within the area of the Russian Sumy offensive inside the Sumy Oblast. We have a major amount of news today, but it is going to be the most pressing and pertinent sort of news that we can get to y'all, that we are going to be moving into the area of The Hague in the Netherlands. We have been able to hear of significant developments inside of The Hague in the Netherlands today, and one of the most significant and interesting developments is the rapid shift in U.S. foreign policy against the Russian Federation seen by the president today. We actually were able to see that for the first time ever, President Trump of the United States of America and President Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of the state of Ukraine, were able to meet today inside of the NATO summit at The Hague, and it actually appears that according to the information that we have and the pictures that came out, the two were actually getting along quite well this time around. We have also been able to hear that the President of the United States has extended the idea of actually providing for congressional drawdowns of military equipment and support to the state of Ukraine to help them to continue on in the fight against the Russian Federation, and we've also been able to hear that the state of Ukraine will be allowed to purchase and acquire Patriot missile systems and Patriot missile interceptors to be able to help defend their skies greater against the incoming Russian threat. This is also on the background of one of the most significant statements that we've been able to hear in terms of foreign policy in Eastern Europe currently, and for that I will actually be sending y'all directly to the statement made by the President of the United States at The Hague today, which is quite concerning and is starting to show that this isn't just a European belief, this is now also a significant NATO belief, not only in Europe, but also in the United States as well. Here's the statement from the President.
I know one thing, he'd like to settle. He'd like to get out of this thing. It's a mess for him. He called the other day. He said, can I help you with Iran? I said, no, you can help me with Russia. Because, you know, in the last few weeks, we took care of India and Pakistan, Kosovo, Serbia. I think on Friday we have coming in, the Congo is coming in, and Rwanda is coming in. That was a vicious war that went on, a machete war. Heads chopped off all over Africa. They're coming in. We did two others in addition to that. Nobody's ever done anything like this. No, I consider him a person that's, I think, been misguided. I'm very surprised, actually. I thought we would have had that settled easy. I've settled 4 of them in the meantime. But he did call up and he said, you know, he's close to Iran. He'd like to help us get a settlement. I said, no, you help me get a settlement with Russia. And I think we're going to be doing that too. Yeah, please.
We've also
that's an interesting reversal right there, because you know it's kind of rare, and this is not a political statement. It's kind of rare to hear personal responsibility being taken for a situation like this in a political context. And considering that he basically admitted right there that he was not able to settle the war in the specified time frame that he gave previously, That's kind of rare, and that also indicates they must have met a really bad brick wall with Putin in the background that we're not fully aware of. Because for that to be admitted publicly, the negotiations must be pretty much dead at this point, completely.
And really quickly, Matthew, I was actually looking for the statement that we also, I have to make sure we show you all the additional statements as well that we do not have the video for. But the President of the United States has also stated in additional statements that were made at this press conference today that the United States is with, or as in his words directly, we're with NATO all the way. And we've also been able to hear the President say that NATO is going to become very strong with us, as in the United States of America, speaking as representative for the Republic in the conference today. We have also been able to hear some additional information as well, and I'm wanting to see if I can find this at least right here, because for some reason
Remind me, what is it? I can grab it real quick.
it's the upcoming conflict with the Russian Federation that appears to be inevitable at this point. The whole reason why he was making these statements today, it doesn't appear that was actually included in that specific video address, although I remember that it was earlier. So can we find that really quickly, Matthew, at least a quotation or a video of that, so that we can show that here on stream to everyone? Because I want to make sure that we can find that here, because that was one of the most crucial statements that he actually made today, and at the moment I actually appear to have not included that in the video speech that was just given a moment ago by the president.
So yeah, give me just a moment. I'll toss it over to you. I'll text you when I have it.
Got you. So we'll be waiting for that in the meantime, but we have been able to see that it appears that the United States of America, through the statements of the President of the United States today, is going to be moving rapidly into the concept of not only supporting NATO, but actually assisting in rapid remilitarization of the country. We have also been able to get some additional statements as well, and I'll read you all off some of the more significant statements that the President of the United States has made today inside of The Hague in the Netherlands. The President has also made these statements as well. Hopefully, NATO buys American military hardware. The Ukraine crisis highlighted rebuilding the defense base, specifically inside of Europe. Allies cannot depend on adversaries for critical minerals, largely supporting an idea of self-sufficiency within our Western Bloc for vital supplies and minerals that would be needed in war production or for the basic continuation of economic activity. We also heard statements about Iran. Iran won't get access to nuclear material. It appears that is a hardline statement. The president also reiterates that he thinks that the nuclear materials have not been moved before the strikes were conducted in Operation Midnight Hammer. And we've also been able to hear that NATO is an ongoing project. NATO is safety of Europe and the safety of the world at large. It does appear that the president's statements today are actually showing a rapid reversal in our foreign policy stance at the moment, at least coming out of the office of the president, are actually starting to show that the president is now 100% full behind NATO and is actually now a massive proponent and supporter of NATO, generally showing us that something inevitable had to have happened in the background. And also, a massive shout out to Matthew, who was able to find this really quickly, because I saw this earlier today. I thought that it was included in the video address. It was not. So I'll be getting all this right here, and we'll be reading off the entirety of the statement that was issued by the Institute for the Study of War, an amazing group that we've actually been able, I believe, to speak to a couple of times. But nevertheless, the U.S. President of the United States stated that Russia may have territorial ambitions beyond Ukraine, consistent with the ISW's long-held assessments and our assessments that Russia is preparing for a future conflict with NATO and setting conditions to justify future aggression against non-NATO former Soviet Union states. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio correctly stated that Russia has not shown a willingness to move forward in peace negotiations. The Kremlin continues to leverage Russian Security Council Deputy Chairperson Dmitry Medvedev's aggressive rhetoric to undermine Western support for Ukraine. We've also seen that Medvedev finally got a little bit of his own medicine by the United States. The President of the United States saying that if he wants to threaten nukes about Iran, we'll just kill everyone in Russia. And then Medvedev backed off of that pretty quickly. Russian officials are purposely promoting vague rhetoric about the root causes of Russia's war against Ukraine in order to allow the Kremlin the flexibility to adapt its demands as it sees fit. Russia is reportedly accelerating its missile production capacity with sanctions evasion support from Belarus and the People's Republic of China, also known as the PRC officially. That's Communist China, by the way. That's not the island of Taiwan, which is the Republic of China, which is a totally different country. NATO and Western officials reaffirmed their commitment commitment to collective defense and security, to increasing defense spending in the face of increased Russian aggression, and to providing support to Ukraine. Ukraine's European partners continue to allocate military aid to Ukraine and deepen cooperation with the Ukrainian Defense Industrial Base, the DIB. Ukrainian forces likely conducted a long-range strike against the Russian military-industrial enterprise in the Rostov Oblast on June 24th, which we were able to confirm here on the channel, as they did strike and destroy a drone production facility and oil refinery within the city of Taganrog, which is inside the Rostov Oblast. It does appear quite clear at this moment that the United States has taken a significant shift in its foreign policy prerogatives with the Russian Federation, and we are moving back to viewing the Russian Federation as an adversary and largely an enemy of the Republic and of Western interests as a whole, and we are preparing for this inevitable action that the Russian Federation will be making for its invasion of Eastern Europe, which appears to be quite evident and obvious at this point. Whether the Russian Federation would ever succeed in one of those offensives is yet to be seen, and the answer is largely it would not. It cannot even succeed in Ukraine, and I do have to remind everyone that Ukraine isn't exactly, made up of an army of Captain Americas or super soldiers. The Ukrainian army was a Soviet-era equipped army for the large part going into this conflict, and even they, using largely 1980s Soviet technology, which may as well be equivalent to early 1970s American military tech, was able to hold off the Russians and is still surviving in this conflict 3.5 years into the future. So it's quite clear that if the Russian Federation went up against the whole of NATO, it would not be a winning fight for them. But that does not mean they could not give it a good college try, as they call it, or a shot in the dark. But nevertheless, a lot of people have been talking about these statements that were made by the President of the United States today, and the fact that it appears quite evident now that the United States of America and the Russian Federation appear to be preparing for a major conflict across the broader face of Eastern Europe. And Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
Okay, so this is a very big and bold reversal that we've seen today from U.S. officials. So far, the previous line was that apparently Ukraine was a lost cause and there wasn't much to do left to help Ukraine. Now we're hearing in a bold reversal, U.S. officials are saying that Putin has territorial ambitions beyond Ukraine and perhaps they're going to attack NATO in the very near future. And that was also repeated by Zelensky, who claims to have evidence that Russia is planning to go into NATO very, very soon. And that's a huge reversal because the U.S., like I mentioned, has not acknowledged that, at least in this new administration, until today. So that's a very big change. And it looks like the audience is pretty much all over the place with this question. It looks like 34% said Putin is close to launching an attack on NATO, while 28% said Putin will never invade NATO, and 27% said it sounds like a pressure tactic. And considering we've been hearing this literally for years now at this point, and Putin has not stopped his war in Ukraine, and Putin even misled the U.S. president to believe that he actually wanted to negotiate an end to the war, which now even the U.S. president, who was desperately trying to negotiate, is realizing it's a dead end. There's a brick wall here, and you can't negotiate with Putin, just like you can't negotiate with the Iranians. It's impossible. They're terrorist regimes, and they don't function like that, and they're not honest. So I would say the intelligence clearly shows at this point that Putin wants to reestablish the Soviet bloc. That's something that he's had in his mind for a long time. He pulled the trigger on Ukraine, and he's coming very close to getting to the really unstable point in his mind where he's able to pull the trigger on an invasion of a NATO country, most likely Estonia, Latvia, or Lithuania, one of those Baltic states that's a little bit easier to get to for Russia since they share a land border. So I think it is coming up soon. Now, when I say soon, we're not sure exactly how soon it's going to be. It could be a year or two away. It could be months away. There's just no telling. But clearly, global instability is increasing. And when that happens, the odds of Putin doing something crazy to one of those Baltic states starts going up. So I'm with the 34%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I'm also with the 34% as well. I do actually believe that the Russian Federation is moving towards an aggressive expansion or an attempt to expand into Eastern Europe. I do not say this lightly. Many people throw around the statement, and I'll make sure to make it a little bit clear because this is one I'm sure people have heard a lot. So-and-so is literally Hitler. And usually that's thrown around so much that it's lost a lot of its weight. But the truth of the matter is that if anyone ever truly was close to being Hitler, it actually would be Putin inside the Russian Federation. There are a lot of similarities, at least in Putin's grander ambition for the Russian Federation in this modern age, that the Nazi Germans had in the 1930s and 40s for their grander image of Germany at the time. It's been made clear over the past 2 decades that Vladimir Putin's ambitions lie outside of the Russian Federation's current borders, specifically pertaining to Central Asia and Europe. The CSTO was the first soft start at trying to create a reorganization of an older Russian imperial sort of a structure. But the ambitions of the Russian Federation go far beyond just a simple collective security treaty organization like they have in the CSTO. Putin has made it incredibly clear that wherever Russian soldiers have set foot in the past, that is considered to be Russian land or under Russian control, period. There is no negotiation of that on a Russian perspective. And as a matter of fact, if you do not believe me on that, I believe that we actually have, oh, here we go. Let me go get the statement. I'll show you all that just to back up my poll. Here is the statement made by Putin himself just a couple of days ago, mind you all, about if a soldier of the Russian state at any point in history has stepped foot on foreign land, it is considered to be Russia's. Here's the statement.
Происходит определенная логика боевых действий, и войска оказываются на разных территориях. Но, знаете, у нас есть такая старинная, это не поговорка, не притча, а старинное правило. Там, где ступает нога русского солдата, то наша.
There you have it. He said right there, wherever a Russian soldier sets foot, it's ours. And that's just not a rule that he made up. He said that that is an old rule, meaning that this rule has existed throughout pretty much the entirety of Russian history. That's what he meant. And it's quite clear.
And he's had that belief the entire time. Like, by the way, I know some people are going to say, oh, well, Putin's changed. All of a sudden today he's had a new change of heart, and now he's very much opposed to negotiating, and he wants to take every piece of land that a Russian soldier steps on. He's had that mentality the entire time he's been negotiating with the new administration. For whatever reason, the new administration didn't see that until today. I don't know why, but all we can hope for is that they come around, and it looks like today they've come around to the truth. But Putin has had that psychopathic belief in his head literally for years. That's why he started the invasion of Ukraine. And any point in time, people have looked at him and thought, oh, Putin's negotiating in good faith. He hasn't been. He's just been putting on a mask and trying to portray himself like he has since the year 2000 as a democracy-supporting leader, which he's not. He's a dictator, and he's been planning this entire time, just like he's plotting right now to potentially invade NATO.
It is quite clear that he has larger ambitions for what Russia is going to be doing in Europe, and we already know what that is. If many of you all know this, I'll draw some parallels between the Nazi Germans and the modern-day Russian Federation, but there actually is a lot of parallels, at least in their ideology or the sort of statements that they make. A lot of people know that the Nazi Germans had this concept of Lebensraum, which is living room. That's the English translation of that German word or German phrase, and that means that the Germans were going to expand out specifically eastwards to take over the entirety of Eastern Europe and Russia and pretty much subjugate the population there into slave labor, because those are ancient Aryan German lands, and they were going to pretty much systematically kill everyone in Eastern Europe and then eventually replace them with Germanic people. That was generally the plan. The Russian Federation actually has a very similar concept to the Nazi German ideology of Lebensraum, and they have something called Ruski Mir, which means Russian world. The Russian world is a concept that the Russian Federation is the center of the world, and the Russian people are truly superior to every other person on the planet. It's no joke, that's actually what they think. And that the Russians are simply the protectors of all these inferior peoples within specifically Eastern Europe or wherever the Russian Empire once existed. And a lot of people always confuse this. A lot of people always say that Vladimir Putin wants to recreate the Soviet Union, which isn't necessarily the case. He wants to recreate the Russian Empire in particular. Because if you ever look at his territorial ambitions, whenever they're spelled out clearly, they include the Baltics, Finland, and parts of Poland. And in no part of Soviet history were parts of Poland or Finland a part of the Soviet Union. They were a part of the Russian Empire, however, and that does make it wildly clear that, at least for his ambitions in Europe, it has nothing to do with rekindling the Soviet Union and beginning a communist state. He wants to create pretty much the sort of monarchical oligarchy system that the Russian Empire had, but with him as the new czar. It's a delusion of grandeur for the large part, much like Hitler had for Nazi Germany. And it's one that's becoming so evidently clear that not only is every single European state and every European head of state making these claims, but now the President of the United States is also making these statements as well, and making it quite clear that these Russian ambitions are not an idea of fanciful fiction to create ourselves a boogeyman in Europe. This is a real, inevitable reality of life, that the Russian Federation is a dangerous country that not only has been grinding on a deadly, endless war in Ukraine for 3.5 years, but it's planning on bringing that very same bloodshed, toil, and suffer to that of the Eastern Europeans as a whole, to our part of the world, to our alliance, to our American sphere. And that's the issue that we're seeing right now. And it does appear that the president's statements today in regards to NATO and in regards to future preparations against the Russian Federation are making it all the more evident and clear that the United States is going to start quietly mobilizing some war industry in the background to not only help rearm the European states with American weaponry and arms, but to also arm the United States of America even further than it already has been armed so far to prepare for this inevitable conflict that may be coming around the corner that we really can't stray away from. And I know a lot of people don't like the idea of war, but the truth of the matter is that nobody likes war. Absolutely not. But if war is coming and someone is going to bring us war, we're going to end the thing. If the Russians want to start war with us, let's take a little chapter out of Medvedev's book really quickly. The Russian state will be laid to waste. Every single industrial concern in the country that produces any money that the Russian Federation's economy is able to survive off of, or the Russian government is able to get some tax money off of, would be destroyed. Every single Russian government official, including Putin, wouldn't live to see the light of day if that conflict began. The Russian armies in Kaliningrad and the Russian armies within the Leningrad military district as a whole would be destroyed to cinder and ash. And while the Russians might be able to try and get a last bravura by firing off some of the few operational intercontinental ballistic missiles and tactical nuclear weapons they have, they'll never be able to rejoice in any sort of a sweet victory that this delusion of the Ruski Mir will ever bring them. If the Russians want war, we'll bring them war, and we'll bring them enough war that there will never be one like it, the likes of which the world will ever see beyond that point. But it is absolutely ridiculous and outrageous to think that while the United States and Europe have tried to stray away from any larger conflict, the delusions and ideas of grandeur in Putin's mind is pretty much going to force us into a conflict because he's going to start it whether we want to avoid the war or not. But also on top of that, we've also been able to hear of an allegation made by British officials today that is one of the most interesting ones that we've been able to hear. And this is one that we've actually heard from Poland in the past, but this is the first time that the accusation has ever been lobbed against the Russians in history so far, at least in the modern history. The United Kingdom's government security sources claim Russia is fueling the illegal migration of small boat crises, which have been a major issue plaguing the British southeastern coasts near to the Strait of Dover, near to the area of the coastline of Pas-de-Calais inside of France, supplying fake documents, transport, and military escorts to smuggling gangs to overwhelm UK border defenses and stir division. And so it actually appears that the British government, as of today, has officially lobbed a declaration that the Russian Federation is weaponizing illegal migrations to try and cause instability inside of the United Kingdom. This is the first time, mind you all, that this allegation has ever been made against the Russians. We have only seen this allegation made one other time so far inside of Europe, and that has been by the Polish against the Belarusians. And to quickly guide y'all through that, because there's actually a lot of validity to the claim that the Polish made against the Belarusians, is that the Belarusians actually took a lot of Syrians in the middle of the Syrian civil war and gave them these wildly cheap-looking tourist contracts, or more so tourist vacation plans to Belarus that were so cheap that it was an offer that they literally couldn't refuse. Syrians took it up in the tens of thousands. I believe it's actually close to about over 140,000 took up this vacation offer. The Belarusians literally flew all of these Syrians into Belarus, and as soon as they landed, they confiscated all of their passports, gathered around the Belarusian police, and literally paraded them down the highways from Minsk down to the border regions near to Hrodna and Brest and everywhere in between, and have still to this day for years now have been sitting these guys out in camps, and every once in a while the Belarusian police come through, clear out the camps, and start pushing all of these pretty much migrants at this point towards the border to see if they will start to run across the Polish border and start to overwhelm the Polish border security forces, and also possibly cause further instability in Poland, and also lead a little bit of a small window for the Belarusians and the Russians to be able to get through some FSB agents and other officials into Poland and then into the greater area of Europe at large. That is a claim.
The only problem is Poland didn't mess around with that whatsoever. They put up huge like barbed wire fences along the entire border. I think they're still constructing some new fences along the Polish border as well. They've stationed active duty soldiers there along the border as well, and it's highly controlled. And anytime you actually hear, and I've seen footage out there in the public domain, there will literally be like rustling on the other side of the border from the Poland side. You can hear on the Belarus side, there's a lot of rustling going on. And according to the Polish military, those are tons of migrants trying to climb over and climb into Poland that's apparently been poked and prodded by the Belarusian government to go running into Poland. And apparently the Polish are claiming it's sponsored and funded entirely by the Russian government, which, seems to line up with the UK claim that they're doing the same thing over there with the UK.
It does appear that it's a systematic sort of a process that's being conducted, and it's quite a wild one at that. It's actually crazy to see that the Russians largely, by the way, just to explain the situation with that, it's a little bit more complex. Back during the Syrian civil war, which was one of the largest humanitarian crises that we've seen recently, especially during the middle of the 2010s, around 2014 and 2015, it actually became incredibly common, considering that Turkey has a special economic relationship with the European Union, but is not a direct EU member, that the Turks were trying to take a lot of the Syrian refugees and send them elsewhere. And a lot of European countries accepted taking on the burden of bringing a lot of these Syrian refugees on into Europe itself, and would take them on literally multiple thousand-mile-long ventures by foot from Turkey up into places like Germany, France, and so on. It's ended up causing a decent amount of issues. These Syrian refugee groups have not really been able to mesh with the local cultures, and the local cultures have also largely rejected these groups as well. And this has caused a lot of angst, or angst as the Germans would call it, and social friction in a decent amount of areas where every large amount of these refugee populations now reside. And at least within areas around Pas-de-Calais, there's still a large amount of refugee camps that are in the surrounding forest and woods near to Pas-de-Calais, and are still there to this day. But these groups also conduct what is called in Britain the boat ventures, where they get on boats and then they just sail right across the Strait of Dover, which is about 20 miles, right into the area around Folkestone and Dover, and then they generally start to enter Britain. There really isn't a way for the British to, at least by their laws currently, to deal with this situation, but it does appear that at least with the statements today, it looks like they're possibly going to start dealing with these issues as national security issues, which means that due to that sort of a logic or reasoning to the current situation, we may see the deportations of these illegal migrants that are attempting to enter the United Kingdom will start to become much more widespread. And we may also see the British authorities will start to round up other migrants that may be believed to be a part of this Russian scheme, and also deport them as well, either back to the Syrian interim government or back across the channel into France, where they legally can reside, at least according to French law at the moment. But still, it's
really quite wild. It's the Russians are essentially, they're taking people which are refugees and taking people that are very desperate, and they're basically using them as pawns, as like basically involuntary soldiers to go and invade the borders of European countries, NATO countries, and it's really despicable, actually, because these people might not have done this on their own accord, but the Russians gave them an outlet to say, oh, well, look, if you want a better life, we'll simply give you transportation, we'll put you on the border of this European country, and we'll send you basically charging straight towards your death, because Poland's not messing around. Poland is shooting these people when they come up to the border. Like, if you try to go climb into Poland, they're not messing around. That they take a very different approach to that than other countries. They simply shoot on sight. So the Russians are using these people as pawns against their will, basically, not informing them of what's about to happen. And it's just a mess. It's really quite terrible.
It's an interesting sort of a situation where we're trying to keep an eye on it the best we can, and I can see a lot of people have opinions about this, but we're just reporting the statements that are being made by governments today. We're not trying to get involved in the political zeitgeist that's existed around this, either in Europe or America, for over a decade and a half at this point. We're just stating the news and information that we've gotten today, and the general understanding that this is now some sort of a strategic weapon that the Russian Federation and the Republic of Belarus are attempting to use against the European states that either are having to deal with the Belarusians trying to literally run hundreds of thousands of migrants across the border into Poland, or in other situations, the migrants that were allowed into Europe back in the mid-2010s are now being weaponized by the Russians and attempting to be used to cause instability inside of a larger amount of these European states, at least from what we're hearing from the British today. Outside of that, we were able to see that a Russian IL-96 is en route to the United States today, most likely carrying some sort of a diplomatic envoy or staff from the Russian Federation to speak to the United United States in person, or at least the U.S. Secretary of State. We have not been able to get any further developments on this situation in the moment, but it's still an interesting one. Outside of that, we have also been able to hear that in the U.S. government, it does appear that statements are once again coming out, at least from the Central Intelligence Agency, for their official press release about the situation involving the nuclear program in Iran. This is a statement. The Central Intelligence Agency can confirm that a body of credible intelligence indicates Iran's nuclear program has been severely damaged by the recent targeted strikes. This includes new intelligence from a historically reliable and accurate source/method that several key Iranian nuclear facilities were destroyed and would have to be rebuilt over the course of years. CIA continues to collect additional reliably sourced information to keep appropriate decision makers and oversight bodies fully informed. When possible, we will also provide updates and information to the American public, given the national importance of this matter and in every attempt to provide transparency. I generally have to tell you, although, do not expect a lot of transparency from the CIA. A lot of their intelligence that they gather is incredibly sensitive, and if they also allow our adversaries to know exactly what we actually understand the situation is inside of Iran, that could lead the Iranians to get a little bit of a step ahead of the game. So there's not going to be an amazingly large amount of public statements made by the CIA, but it does appear that at least the CIA at this moment is saying that the nuclear program took severe damage. Notice, however, that they did not say that it was completely destroyed, just that it took severe damage and it would take years to rebuild the nuclear program. We have also been able to hear that there's been some additional information also published as well today about the Operation Midnight Hammer that was successfully conducted against the Iranians by the U.S. Air Force and Navy. We actually were able to hear that it has been confirmed without a doubt at this point that F-22s and F-35s escorted the B-2 bombers into Iran over the Atlantic, as a matter of fact, and they were supported by about 52 Stratotankers, and that was stated at the NATO summit at The Hague earlier today. We also got to hear something else incredibly interesting. The flights that we were actually observing on flight radar were actually decoys. This entire action right here by the United States was a major act of deception, which is one that we actually followed here on the channel and largely took it as the B-2 flight. It appears that it was actually able to fool the entirety of the world and the entirety of the open source intelligence community involving everyone, because every single open source intelligence source, including our close sources like ourselves, Phytix Network, and so on, we all actually took this as the air operation that was going to be flying over the Pacific. It turns out that this was actually a massive ruse, and the actual B-2 bombers did take off from Whiteman, but instead flew eastwards over the United States and into the Atlantic, and not westbound over the western part of the United States and into the Pacific. So it actually was a very elaborate deception, and not only that, what even made it more convincing is that B-2 bombers actually did take off from Whiteman and fly out into the Pacific. And one of them is now stuck in Honolulu because apparently it had engine troubles, has landed in Honolulu. There's a picture of it right there. And it's now stuck inside of Hawaii at the moment as they're attempting to repair the bomber and then get it back on its way back to Whiteman Air Force Base after the ruse has been completed. So at least from all of the information that we had, it was quite evident, or at least clear from what the United States was wanting us to see, that the B-2 bombers were actually flying over the Pacific. Not only were there a large amount of Stratotankers present, enough that would have supported an air operation like the one we saw in Iran, but there also were some B-2 bombers present flying over the Pacific and on their way, at least from what we knew, towards Iran. It appears that information was entirely untrue, however, and it was a deception created intentionally by the Department of Defense to mislead everyone in the world, including us here on the news, into believing that that was the direction that the attack was being conducted from instead of over the Atlantic. Very convincing.
It's quite crazy. It's quite crazy that the same thing actually happened back in 2023. Some B-2s were flying down to Hawaii. One of the B-2s actually had to do an emergency landing, just like the one that just happened here with the Iranian mission. One did an emergency landing in Honolulu, and it actually got grounded there for like a total of 6 months because it had some mechanical issues. It sounds like the same thing's repeating itself now in 2025 that happened back in 2023. It's like Hawaii's like the graveyard for B-2s or something. It seems like there's always like an emergency happening around Hawaii, and they always cause them to land there, and then they get stuck there for like half a year or something.
Yeah, it is quite interesting, actually, how a lot of the B-2s always end up kind of stuck in Hawaii at some point, but still a very interesting sort of a development that we were able to hear about, which is proving to us now that Operation Midnight Hammer actually flew over the Atlantic, not the Pacific. Outside of that, we also were able to get some additional news coming out of the Islamic Republic of Iran, and there was quite a decent amount of news that has come out of the Middle East today. We are now hearing, at least according to Israeli news sources, including the Jerusalem Post, that they are stating that it is almost certain that Iran was not able to take uranium out of the nuclear enrichment facilities before or after the strikes, largely suggesting that the Iranians have actually lost a decent amount of the 400 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium that was claimed to be missing by pretty much everyone except for the President of the United States and the Secretary of Defense. We are getting information today that is once again showing us the damage that was caused at Fordo. We are getting even higher definition satellite pictures and footage from the Maxar satellites, and we can once again see the damage that was caused by the MOPS and also other explosives that were dropped onto the Fordo facility by the B-2s. We can see here that there is some charring and burning around the outside of the facility, possibly showing that there was some sort of ordnance dropped in that area, although we would not be able to tell y'all which one was specifically dropped around there. We can also see, once again, the craters caused by the GBU-57 MOPS. We can clearly see several large craters. It appears to actually be about 7 of them that apparently slammed directly into the underground facility and caused severe damage to it. We can also see another larger surface impact bomb, as there is a significant conventional crater seen here that is not suggesting that it was a subterranean explosion, and it was an actual Terran explosion on the surface that also hit this facility within the southern area of the complex. We also got to see that outside of that, there is significant fire damage to the surrounding hillside near to this air defense radar site, which is showing that that was also targeted and hit. We got confirmation and information way earlier in the day before the U.S. strike on Fordo that this facility actually was hit by the Israeli Air Force and not by the U.S. Air Force. We were able to get video and picture evidence to confirm that as well about 12 hours before Operation Midnight Hammer went ahead. So that generally does prove to us that this was not conducted by the U.S. airstrike. This was conducted by the Israeli airstrikes 12 hours prior. We also got to hear some additional information as well that the Natanz facility is already getting repairs affected to it at the moment. We were able to see from Maxar satellite footage here from June 22nd to just I believe it was the 24th or the 25th, it already appears that the Iranians are now plugging up the holes caused by U.S. bombings and are beginning to repair the Natanz uranium enrichment plant. Here's the picture from June 22nd. And this is the picture that we have from June 24th. They've already plugged the crater that was caused by the explosive that hit the underground facility, and they've also set up some tents, as it appears that there may be work crews trying to shore up the roofing for this facility and possibly begin to rebuild it from the ground up to where it'll be operational again and reusable within their nuclear weapons program. This is also...
That's shocking. That's shocking, actually. Is the first photo you showed of the satellite footage of the damage was June 22nd, and they've already started repairing it just merely 2 days later on the 24th. That's actually extremely fast right there. And that seems to coincide with what the Iranians were claiming they were doing. And I thought it was honestly BS when they were saying it. The Iranians had said, like at the same time frame here around June 24th, that all that's needed at this facility was mere repairs, and they'd already started repairing it. And it looks like they were actually telling the truth on that because they're at least plugging the holes. Now, obviously, we can't see the subterranean complex. That's not being seen from satellite. But the fact they're already working that quick on it suggests that they wasted no time whatsoever getting back to this. And, you know, everybody's claiming, or actually not everybody's claiming, but everybody's sort of like on the fence about what the damage is underneath the surface here. So I don't know, like it's kind of up in the air at this point, whether or not it's actually destroyed under the surface. I think the CIA clarified today that they're claiming it was destroyed, right? That's what they're officially claiming?
It appears that everyone's claiming that they were severely damaged, which is what we were also saying here, is that it's quite obvious that they all took severe damage or were completely destroyed. We would understand that the subterranean complex is clearly going to show that it was almost entirely destroyed underground, because the most of the explosive force was underground. It wasn't on the surface. And I don't really know what a lot of people are looking for, and I see a lot of people saying this in the chat, and I'd have to agree with them that they're right. There is really no way for us, at least here on the channel, or at least by public statements, to confirm what extent of damage has actually been caused to these facilities. They were all underground. Most of the explosive force from these bombs happened underground, several hundred feet underground. So it is just next to impossible for us to go, oh, it was heavily damaged or it was heavily destroyed based off our own analysis. The only analysis that we can work off of is analysis that's published by the Mossad, by the CIA, by the Department of Defense, so on and so forth. And it does appear that today, now all of them are getting onto the same page that the facilities were severely damaged, but it still appears that there are some differences as to whether or not the uranium was destroyed in these strikes, or now made inaccessible or not. There still seems to be a little bit
Yeah.
of wiggle room with that at the moment, but it's quite clear by everyone's definition, and we have to work with this because we don't have anything to prove otherwise either way, whether to confirm it or deny it, that these facilities took severe damage and were nearly destroyed as a result of the strikes.
Well, yeah, I see people saying maybe they're plugging the holes to contain a radiation leak. Maybe that's why they're trying to do it, but I'm not really sure. We've been told by the nuclear agency so far that there hasn't been any detected radiation leakage from any of these facilities, but that's going off what we're hearing from these, international watchdog agencies. So, you got to take what they're saying with kind of like a grain of salt, in my opinion, because we don't really have any independent readings from the ground that we can really go off of. And obviously, they're not taking pictures of Geiger counters. They're simply saying, trust us, bro. There's no radiation here. So maybe they're plugging it for that reason, but obviously without seeing underneath the ground, we can't really say for a fact what the hell is happening. All we can see here is they're plugging holes. But the fact they're working that quick, though, is quite remarkable in my opinion, considering it was literally just attacked 2 days prior to this satellite photo right here.
But it does appear that they are trying to at least plug up the hole. But that doesn't even lead us to even know what the damage is underground. The damage could be insanely significant. The Iranians make it sound like the facilities were pretty much fine, like they got hit, but they'll be able to, get out a dustpan and a mop, clean up the facility, and then get it back up and running. We don't know that, and that also would be something that the Iranians would want to say because they would want to make it look like the Iranian nuclear program is invincible, which it most likely was not. So we are working off of everyone else's statements, the IAEA statements, the Mossad statements, the CIA statements, and the Department of Defense's statements, which all line up at this point, not on the side of where the uranium went, but on the side of the damage to the facilities. The facilities were so severely damaged that they were either knocked out or made inoperable for years. That has become incredibly clear from every single angle and every single aspect that isn't an Iranian statement. So it does appear that at the moment, that is what we're able to work with right now. However, we have also been able to hear inside of the Iranian government that they are now suspending any cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency, which is the UN agency responsible for maintaining and observing any nuclear technology programs around the world, and largely ensuring adherence to the non-proliferation treaties that have been signed by the major nuclear-armed powers throughout the world. It does appear that a lot of people are talking about these developments inside of Iran, and it looks like a great deal of people are also talking about the secret site that was just spotted. And let me actually show this one to y'all, because interestingly enough, this one was hiding right under everyone's noses, and apparently no one noticed it until today. It was also hiding under our noses as well here on the channel, and that is the Pickaxe Mountain complex. And some of y'all are a little bit surprised. I'm looking at the Natanz nuclear facility. You're like, well, why are you looking at that? That's not Pickaxe Mountain. Pickaxe Mountain is literally right here, just a mile and a half outside of the Natanz uranium enrichment complex. This facility is actually believed to be several hundred feet under the surface of a mountain, and may actually truly not be possible to be hit or destroyed by a GBU-57 MOP because it is just that deep. This is leading many to believe, or at least analysts for that matter, that if all of the enriched uranium, the 400 kilograms to 60% grade uranium, survived the attack, or even just some of it, it most likely was housed within this specific facility inside of Pickaxe Mountain that you can see right here on the satellite footage. And a lot of people are starting to get a little bit more interested in this facility. What is it? Why is it here? It almost has the exact same profile that the Fordow uranium enrichment plant had inside of the mountains just north of Qom. It's becoming incredibly clear that there might be something else going on here, something even larger than the massive Natanz uranium enrichment plant that actually also had an underground facility right within this area right here that also housed a large amount of centrifuges used to enrich uranium. So, Matthew, what are people thinking about this information, and what are you thinking about it as well?
Okay, so the question here says, satellite photos show that Iran has begun repairing its nuclear sites. We just saw a minute ago they were plugging the holes at one of these nuclear sites within 2 days of the attack. And now we spotted this new secret site. What's it called, Enforcer? What's the official name of the secret site here? Pickaxe Mountain. That's what they're calling this new site that's right next to this other facility that's already been struck. So what are your thoughts about this new revelation, and also the fact that they're already repairing their nuclear sites? So 43% said it's clear evidence of nuclear work going on in Iran yet again, this quickly, while 20% said Iran's merely repairing the damage for safety reasons, and 21% said it seems concerning, but we need some more intel to make up our minds. And it's really hard to tell. Honestly, I'm kind of shocked that all of a sudden we just learned about Pickaxe Mountain just right now. It seems like we should have already known about that. And it's kind of debatable as to whether or not they did already know in the intel between Israel and the United States that that site literally existed right next to a pre-existing site that was already struck using the B-2 bombers and also these other Tomahawk missiles as well. So to me, it seems like it's clear evidence of nuclear work, because if the other site here at Pickaxe Mountain was not struck and it's right next to this other facility, it only makes sense. That's probably another site where they're working on centrifuges. They're working on enriching uranium. Honestly, we don't know the details about that site, but considering it's so deep and it's more heavily fortified than Fordo, which was desperately struck by the Israelis, they were saying we have to strike Fordo because it has all these secret centrifuges we have to get rid of. Now this other site, that which has just now been discovered, and there's been a big revelation about it at Pickaxe Mountain, now we're like, oh, well, there's another one, and we didn't strike it. So it makes you wonder how effective were all these strikes if we left facilities like Pickaxe Mountain in the wide open and we didn't even hit them. So to me, I'm with the 44%. It seems like clear evidence that nuclear work is still going on. And now that the fact the IAEA is not being allowed to inspect the nuclear sites, according to what Iran's saying, this is troublesome to say the least. And it sounds like the U.S. might end up responding to it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that it is clear evidence that nuclear work is still being continued, considering that this facility has the exact same profile as the Fordo uranium enrichment plant, and also has two major underground entrances. You can see both right here. You can also see what appears to be some additional work or underground entrances that were also made here. This is quite a large underground facility that we're seeing in this satellite picture here. It is also a little interesting to note, this was hiding under literally everyone's noses. We didn't notice it here on the channel. No other open source intelligence source appears to have been able to notice it on their end as well. Nobody noticed this facility. Apparently, even the Department of Defense did not notice this facility, and it's crazy because it's literally just a mile or so outside of the Natanz facility. It's right outside the perimeter. So, at least from what we're hearing at the moment, it does appear that there may be some nuclear activity or nuclear development programs that could still be conducted within the safe harbor or safe haven of the underground facility at Pickaxe Mountain, and that is clearly showing to me that the U.S.'s job, like we were saying yesterday, is not done. The original operation was successful in destroying key nuclear facilities, but there are key nuclear facilities that appear to be still existent and operational that were not even touched by the Operation Midnight Hammer, which was conducted several days ago. I believe that this makes it more clear and more evident, along with the suspension of cooperation with the IAEA by the Islamic Republic of Iran, that they are still working towards the development of a nuclear weapon, and we need to take any and all actions necessary to continue to ensure that we stop and completely upend their ability to produce or field any nuclear weaponry at any point in the future. We cannot let this opportunity pass us by. We already conducted a successful strike. We're already in the situation working to end it, and I don't think that we should end with a half-assed job. We should go in again, and we should deal with the situation however we have to. If we have to do it, we might have to send in, or we might have to see Israel send in special operations forces on the ground of this particular facility to ensure its destruction from the inside out. We cannot leave any stone unturned with this existent nuclear facility. And also, I see someone say, is the ceasefire in effect? Technically, it is in effect at the moment, but that will not stop us from striking them again, because if the Iranians are still working towards the production of a nuclear weapon, we have a casus belli, ceasefire or not, to justify continued hostile actions against Iran to denuclearize their country and stop them from developing a nuclear weapon. They are in open violation of non-proliferation treaties, which, to explain really quickly, non-proliferation treaties, for some of y'all who may have not heard about that before, is a international treaty that was signed by all of the major nuclear armed powers. So let me go through them really quickly. The United States, France, the United Kingdom, China, and the Russian Federation, along with India and Pakistan, that stated that outside of those specific countries, no other country on the planet was ever going to be allowed to possess or own a nuclear weapon. That was the rule. That was the standard that was laid out back then. Also, a small caveat, South Africa was also a signer of the non-proliferation treaties. They actually had 25 nuclear weapons at a time, but since then they've completely dismantled their nuclear arsenal, and they're now a non-nuclear country, so they really don't count. But I wanted to throw that in for some of the history aficionados that may be interested in that little tidbit of info. But outside of that, the Iranians are not on the list to have a nuclear weapon, and it is our responsibility, if no other nuclear power wants to stop them from getting a nuclear weapon, it's our responsibility to enforce that treaty, because it's in our best interest to stop other countries from getting a nuclear weapon. So I would say that
Enforcer, Enforcer, really quick, while you're still on that same topic right there, Mr. Wiggle, he pointed out something really good in the live chat. A very technical point, but it is true. The U.S. never agreed to a ceasefire. Keep that in mind.
Oh, yeah,
The ceasefire was brokered by the United States, but it was just between Israel and Iran. So there's nothing holding the United States back from striking Iran. Not legally, there's not, because we haven't agreed to anything. And in fact, the United States president is actually saying today that he is considering a second round of strikes on Iran. Now, considering this brand new information right here, he's at least giving it thought. He's not committing to anything yet, but he's at least giving it the credence that maybe going back into Iran and taking a second shot at these facilities might be a decent idea. So it's on the table. Whether or not it happens like within a week or a few days, that's another story, but they're at least thinking about it. And also, we didn't agree to anything either, so we're free to go.
Mr. Wiggles isn't just putting out fruit salad, yummy, yummy. He's also putting out some very good, important information. That's actually correct. That's a very astute observation by Mr. Wiggle. It actually is true that we did not enter into a ceasefire. The Israelis and the Iranians did, but I'm also saying that for the purposes of the Israelis. If the Israelis needed to join in this operation and say the U.S. wanted to have a little bit of cold feet about not sending in our guys on the ground to deal with Pickaxe Mountain, if we had to send people on the ground, the Israelis could. And we still have a very good casus belli, the Israelis and the U.S. for that, in that we're still working to denuclearize their country and stop them from developing a nuclear weapon. And once again, folks, we have to work with some common sense here. Why in the world would the Islamic Republic of Iran stop their cooperation with the International Agency or the International Atomic Energy Agency if they weren't working towards a nuclear weapon? Think about that. For anyone who's doubting that they're working towards a nuclear weapon, think about that. If they had nothing to hide, why are they now stopping all cooperation with the IAEA, which is the only international agency that could uncover and find out that they are working towards a nuclear weapon from this point on? That's because they are going to be working towards a nuclear weapon from this point on, and that's why we have to go in there and continue to deal with them. Because if they're going to start acting shady now, and it's going to be quite clear they're acting shady because they're still working towards a nuclear weapon, we have to go in there and stop them. It's just what we have to do. It's our responsibility to ourselves and our national security interests and to our international alliance that we deal with the Iranian nuclear threat. It's not fun, I know, but it's something that we have to do. We have a job to do, and this is it, and we've got to go out there and we've got to do it. And so with that, we also have another interesting question for all of y'all here. And Matthew, who in the world is going to end up striking first? At least according to the folks down in the chat. Who do they think would strike first, the U.S. or Israel, in an attempt to further denuclearize the Iranians?
All right. So it's not just us saying it, because I see some people saying, oh, you're trying to make the assumption that the U.S. is going to go to war with Iran. We're not the ones saying it. The United States president said today that the war between Israel and Iran might start again very soon. And also, they warned of a new U.S. attack on Iran. So that's a possibility, not a certainty, just a possibility. So what are the audience's thoughts about that issue and that question? So about 54% said Israel will be the one to strike again first, while 19% said Iran's going to start the war again first, and only 13% said the U.S. is going to go back in, strike the nuclear sites, and that'll kick the war off once again. So it looks like the vast majority of people believe that Israel is going to start it again by attacking first. And I would tend to believe that, because so far it appears to be the U.S. is deferring to Israel to do the dirty work. And then if something gets out of control, or if Israel can't take care of it, then the United States comes in as a backup asset, I guess you could say, to strike these facilities. Because the first time we knew Fordo was a threat, we knew Natanz and also Isfahan was a threat to Israel and the West, but we let Israel handle it first. And the moment that Israel said, we can't actually get to Fordo because we don't have the bunker busters, the U.S. went into planning mode. We planned to strike on that facility, and we went in with the B-2s and struck it. So that'll probably be the way it goes round two. If a round two does indeed occur, it'll probably be Israel first, followed up very quickly by another U.S. second strike. So I'm with the 53%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to be with the 53% as well. I would be honest with y'all, though. If I was the president of the United States, I would go in first. It's not about the fact that we're trying to do all the heavy lifting. It's about sending a message to people that the United States is in charge around the world, and we will go in first to prove the fact, not only to our folks, our allies in the Middle East, Europe, and so on, but also in the Middle East and to our enemies as well, that we will be the first in the fray, and it's not going to be a pretty sight at all when we're the first in. Everyone else is just going to be trying to get close to even topping what we did to start the whole thing off. And I think that's generally what I would work off of as a principle. just for the fact that it is a point of importance for our strategic deterrence abilities to show that we are more than willing to take aggressive actions when necessary. But I do actually believe that under the current administration, with how it's been handled so far, the Israelis would generally be the first ones into the fray, and they would start it, and then we would come in and round the thing out, much like we did with the prior conflict that we've already had with the Iranians in support of the Israeli actions attempting to denuclearize them. So I would generally say that would be my approach to it at this moment. But I also have to say, folks, it doesn't, like, in my opinion, and of course I'm not really a jingoist or anything like that, but in my opinion, it doesn't really sound as good, because so far with the denuclearization efforts against Iran, it wasn't a U.S.-led thing, and I have to say that every single time we're on air, I have to say the United States joined in, the most powerful country on the earth, economically and militarily right now, joined in behind the Israelis to go and denuclearize the Iranians. It sounds weird, and it doesn't sound right, because we are following in a minor power in the Western sphere to deal with a situation that is a head of sphere issue. It's not something that we should be following another country into. It's something that we should be leading from the front, just for the fact that we are the most, the largest and most powerful economic and military member of the Western Alliance, at the point where we're pretty much the de facto leader of it. So if we're going to do anything, we ought to be going in and taking care of it first. That would be my honest opinion. So that way, instead of it being the U.S. joining in the Israeli campaign to denuclearize Iran, it's Israel joining into America's campaign to denuclearize Iran. It sounds a lot better, and
Well,
it also position. Go ahead.
I think the U.S. doesn't want to be the first to go in, because then it makes it look like the U.S. started a war, and it makes it very hard to argue we were just assisting our partners in the Middle East. It makes it seem like, and it doesn't really seem like, it is the United States starting a second round of the war. And the U.S. never wants to be really identified as a war starter necessarily. Now, I'm not one of these people. I don't think the enforcer is either, that wants to shy away from war just for the sake of it. If war is justified, sometimes it's better to deal with it early than to let it fester and get worse. Some people want to let issues fester for decades, and then when it gets horrible, then they want to start pointing fingers at people 10 years back and say, that person didn't take action, now they're at fault, when they were originally saying, hey, look, I didn't even want to go to war in the first place. So, sometimes you got to deal with stuff. But I would say, in my opinion, personally, it's better to let Israel start the situation if they want to start it, because, of course, it's their region of the world. We're simply here to ensure our partners in the Middle East are safe and protected. Israel can deal with it, and then we can be an assistance and a backup option to Israel, because, of course, they're going to request our assistance. It's just what Israel does. They always want the U.S. to jump in. They love doing that. So they're clearly going to request it. And that gives us a plausible way to say, well, look, the U.S. didn't start the war. We simply responded to a request of an ally to assist. We didn't start anything. And of course, it's good to have that separation, so that way we don't look like we're like jumping into wars and starting them on a regular basis.
Possibly so, and like that would be a good reason for it. But still, I think I just work on a different perspective. Like, I'm perfectly fine with taking the hit later if people didn't like it and going, yeah, I did that. Because I think that the United States, as the leader of the Western sphere, in most other situations, could join in to help out an ally, but in terms of denuclearization, we have to be at the forefront, because that is the most severe issue we could deal with beyond an invasion of the Western Alliance, for example, in Eastern Europe and NATO. That is something also that we would have to join in on, because we're obviously not going to be the first one attacked. It'll be the Baltic states and Poland that are attacked first, and we have to join in on that. But that's the most significant or threatening thing that could happen, or a similar thing happening in East Asia. But down here, this is the biggest thing that could happen that would threaten us, or the Israelis, or the Saudi Arabians, or anyone else in the region, is Iran getting a nuclear weapon, or anyone in the world getting a nuclear weapon. It seems like this would be one of the few things where you could certainly justify being at the forefront and leading the operation instead of following the Israelis in, because it is the most significant and severe sort of an action that any of our enemies could take, at least from what I would see.
Yeah, maybe so. I mean, me personally, I would say let Israel be the starter of it. Me personally, if it was me in charge, I would say let them start it. So that way we have plausible, I guess you say plausible distance between starting the war and not starting the war. That's just me personally. I'm not so caught up in the idea. Like, we don't need to prove as the United States that we're powerful. The world knows that this country is the most powerful militarily on the planet, and we've proven that time and time again. We don't have any need to go out there and say, oh, we started this war, we can strike Iran first, because Iran knows that we can strike them first. Like, everybody in the world knows, if the U.S. really wants to come after you, it's going to be a bad day. Like, we have nothing to prove here. So I don't really see a benefit in being the first ones to strike, because it's not like we've got something to prove.
Possibly so. That's a pretty good point. But with that, we are going to be continuing on with our on-the-ground developments in the Middle East and also on the front lines in Ukraine as well here in just a minute. But before we get into that, I do want to make sure that we address a couple of questions. And so what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so our first super chat of the night goes to Jenna, last name Tolls, who puts in a very generous $100 donation. And thank you very much, Jenna, for that support once again. And it said it is taco night.
Hey, and I gotta thank you for the massive support, Jenna, last name Tolls, and I gotta thank you massively for supporting the taco night. We absolutely enjoy. It's is it Tuesday? No. It's actually Thursday. Are you sure? I think it might be. It's Wednesday, my dudes. It's actually Wednesday. So it is actually Wednesday. So it's not Taco Tuesday, but it's Taco Wednesday, I suppose. And I could go with a good taco. I love tacos and burritos. Mexican food is some of the best, in my opinion. Way on up there. It's an S tier type of food category. But I do thank you massively for support, Jenna, last name Tolls, and helping this channel to keep running and helping us to have some tacos in our taco fund. So a big thanks to you so much once again. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. So a big thanks to you so much once again, and we're going to be on to the next one.
All right, and our second support of the night goes to K-Dub Janky, who's a channel legend as well, along with Jenna, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you, K-Dub, as well, for being a longtime channel legend and always supporting our work throughout the entire time we've been live on this channel. We do appreciate that. And they said, thanks for the diligent coverage and been hustling grandparents and kids past few weeks, and it's challenging being a dad, but I'm always listening to the broadcast and makes the day very enjoyable. And LSA forever.
Hey, and I got to thank you for the incredible support, K-Dub Janky, and helping this channel to keep running. And I got to say, thank you for enjoying the diligent coverage. We try our best to make sure that the news is well researched, and not only that, that it is also thorough. And I hope that today's news has already been well researched and thorough. We still have a lot to continue here in the very near future, here throughout the rest of the night. But I got to thank you incredibly. And I also got to say, it must be tough being a dad, having to wrestle grandparents and kids alike. That's got to be a lot on your plate. But I do thank you for watching our channel. Hopefully we're able to pass the time a little bit better and make things a little bit easier to deal with, at least given something to make those minutes pass by a little bit quicker. But a big thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep running, because folks like you, K-Dub Janky, have been around for a long time and have helped our channel to keep on rolling throughout the years. And if it wasn't for folks like you who continued to enjoy this channel and support it, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running for many more years, and making sure to provide the news to the hundreds of thousands of people who enjoy this channel each and every single day. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. And I also got to say a big thanks to everyone for enjoying the channel tonight and subscribing. We actually just hit 470,000 subscribers as of tonight. So we are now 30,000 subscribers away from 500,000, which is pretty impressive. I never thought we would get that close to 500,000 this quick. So a big thanks to everyone who's subscribed over the past few weeks, and a big thanks to everyone who's also subscribing tonight. We're incredibly honored. And so a big thanks to you so much once again, K-Dub Janky. And with that, we're on to the last question of the segment, at least for now, and then we're going to be getting into the rest of the news that we have tonight.
All right, so this one goes to John B. Rempel, also another longtime channel legend, and thank you, John, very much for that $50 support right there, and I do not see a comment left with it. Let me double check that just to make sure real quick. And yes, it does appear to be a $50 support without a comment. But thank you very much, John, once again, for that support and throwing in that super sticker. And we do appreciate it from our Canadian viewer. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank you impressively, John B. Rempel, for that massive support and helping us to keep this channel rolling. This channel, at least for the live streams, is entirely crowd-funded through these super chats. And y'all are helping us to make this channel possible every day. Y'all are actually the folks who are pretty much the sponsors of this show. You know, you hear of a lot of people out there, folks who have sponsors for their streams or their videos, or they plug their merch insanely bad, like in their thumbnails and the videos, and it makes up about like half of their video. But here on this channel, we are directly supported by the viewers themselves through the super chats. And so I got to give a huge thanks to all of y'all, our sponsors, every single day that we run these streams, because y'all are the ones who make this news possible for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people a month, tens of millions as a matter of fact this month, and have continued to help us to keep this thing running through the years and to be a champion of politics-free, unbiased, very factual, and heavily detailed news coverage, which is something that's quite rare in the modern day. So a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we would have never been able to make this channel possible and keep it running. And so with that, it is time for us to move on into the remainder of the news that we have. And really quickly, I'm actually going to be bringing y'all through the rest of our Middle East news. There isn't really too much left. And then we'll be moving on up into Ukraine and covering the frontline summary that we've been able to get from Ukraine today. We were able to hear of air defense fire over the city of Rasht a little while ago, as it does appear that there is an unknown cause. We were not able to hear of any drone impacts after the air defense fires, so it may have been that they were firing at ghosts, or it may have been that they were actually firing at something. We have no clue, but it was interesting to note that there was air defense fire over Rasht about 8 hours ago at this point. We've also been able to hear inside the city of Tehran that there were more explosions occurring throughout the city. We actually did get picture evidence of these explosions and subsequent fires that were happening in some small apartment buildings throughout the city, and it is confirming to us that there is some sort of a weird thing going on inside of Tehran. There are still explosions going on. The things we can actually confirm with picture evidence. After the ceasefire has been in effect, we have no clue what's causing them at the moment, but it sure as hell is an interesting occurrence. We'll have to wait and see what is actually going on with that, because it's an odd occurrence to say the least. That's really all I can say, at least at the moment. But moving on from that, we also got to hear that one Iranian leader who apparently had been wounded in the prior days, let's see, let me make sure that I get the name of this commander right. It's a really tough one. Khatam al-Anbiya, who's the, the commander of the central headquarters. Actually, sorry.
That is the central headquarters.
Whoopsie daisy.
Central headquarters.
Whoopsie daisy, folks. I misread it. Both of the names are actually a little bit difficult. Let me make sure that we get it. He was the commander of the Khatam al-Anbiya central headquarters, and his name was actually Ali Shadmani, who died from the wounds he sustained in an Israeli airstrike on June 17th. He died today, and it was announced by the Iranian government. So we were able to confirm that another top leader of the commander of the central military headquarters was actually killed in the Israeli airstrikes as well. It's just that he ended up dying about a day or so after the ceasefire went into effect yesterday. So he is from what we know at the moment, the last casualty of the Iran-Israel air war that occurred for about 2 weeks. So a little bit interesting to note with that. Outside of that,
also real quick, Enforcer, before we move on from that, I see people mentioning that maybe it's Mossad because, of course, we saw during the war, the 12-day war, that we're going to have to call it now because technically it's stopped for the moment. So I guess calling it the 12-day war works, at least for the temporary time being. There were Mossad agents running around everywhere in Tehran. So it's likely that maybe it's an on-the-ground asset of Israel doing this attack. We're not really sure. It's just speculation. I don't recall hearing any reports of air defense active over the capital in Tehran. I remember hearing about air defense active in northern Iran, close to Rasht, but I didn't hear about air defense in Tehran. So maybe it is an on-the-ground asset causing these explosions. It's hard to tell.
Maybe so. Also, really quickly, Matthew, I saw a comment. I got a really good response to it. Someone said, why Americans, Xavier said, why Americans can't read normal English when it comes to Eastern names? Ali, you forgot your effing boxer, LOL? Well, I'll tell you this, buddy. His name might not actually be Ali in that pronunciation, but I'll tell you his ass was stung like a bee by the Israeli Air Force, so it's going to stick. His name was Ali Shadmani, at least according to what we're saying here on the channel. So I hope that answers that well. But also, it may be a Mossad operatives that are on the ground in Tehran. That is also highly likely, getting back to what we were talking about right there, that the Mossad operatives could still be inside of Tehran and conducting attacks, because there is a decent realm of plausible deniability that if they capture these Mossad agents, they could say, Mr. Senator, I'm Singaporean, and then get away with it, or at least just be put in prison, and no real guilt or blame can be put on the Israelis for the attacks on these officials that may be hiding in the apartment buildings. But moving on from that, we were able to hear that there was a little bit of airspace opened over eastern Iran. We have been able to hear that. We were not able to see any aircraft flying through eastern Iran. It appears that no one's brave enough to venture through that area at the moment. But we were able to hear that the airspace over the eastern half of Iran has been open to domestic and international flights at the moment. So that is all of the news that we have coming out of the Middle East at this moment. And we are going to be moving on up into Eastern Europe now, and also a little bit of the Russian news too, to show you what's been going on there. I also thank y'all for appreciating my Muhammad Ali joke about that guy saying how I pronounced it. I'm glad to see a lot of people really did get the punchline there. Moving on up into the area of Chita. Y'all are not going to believe there's actually a city in Russia. The exact way you pronounce it is Chita, which is like cheetah, the animal. But I can tell y'all this. There was no tiger or cheetah going around there saying it ain't easy being cheesy. It actually appears that that thing was on fire. We were able to confirm that an ammunition dump was burning inside the city of Cheetah earlier today. We do not have any ability to confirm what actually caused the fire at the moment. It is highly likely that it was some form of sabotage created by pro-Ukrainian partisans, but we were also able to get a video of the fire here as well, right outside of Cheetah. That is one hell of a fire, and that's also some very strong wind there. So I'm believing that that fire is definitely going to be spreading just because of the strength of the wind. Moving on from that, though, and out of the city of Cheetah, we also were able to confirm within Western Russia that there are drone threats and drone alerts being put out throughout the Saratov, Tula, Voronezh, Kursk, Bryansk, Lipetsk, Oryol, Nizhny Novgorod, Belgorod, and the Republic of Tatarstan regions of the Russian Federation, or oblasts in particular, of the Russian Federation. That is pretty much the entirety of southwestern Russia. That is almost everything within the central and southern military districts of the Russian Federation that currently has a drone attack warning over it at the moment. That was actually put out about an hour before we went live, and we still have not been able to get any video or picture evidence yet of Ukrainian impacts on their targets throughout those areas. But it does appear that there is a major Ukrainian drone attack going on at the moment. We also got to see that Moscow was under attack by drones earlier in the day, and we were able to get a decent amount of video and picture evidence of that right here.
Вон! Ora, вон!
We hear a Pantsir missile firing.
Mama Jan! Krakoca! Ma raketni atacağım. Eskom.
Everyone had a little family meeting there at the end. Outside of that, we were also able to get more footage of the drone attack over Moscow. Oh, look, the poll actually was working, apparently. It did gather votes. That's weird.
I'm having to redo the poll because apparently it had a momentary glitch, so the poll will be back momentarily.
And no worries at all, everyone, and no worries, Matthew. I don't know why that happened. That's the first time I've ever seen it happen, but it'll be fine. We also did get to see the streak of a Pantsir missile that was fired from southern Moscow, once again showing that the air defense was active and Moscow was under an active drone threat at the moment. And we also were able to get this last clip as well. That's either the sound of a Pantsir missile, or that's the sound of a drone impacting a target. We couldn't really tell. This guy also sounded like he was going through a lot while that video was being filmed. Outside of that, we are going to be moving on out of Moscow and finally into Ukraine. And by golly, folks, do we have a lot of location unknowns today. We have a massive amount of them, but there was also a great deal of interesting ones here within these clips as well. We were able to see that the Ukrainians have developed a brand new glide bomb kit. It apparently is very similar, at least to that of the JDAM. In that it allows the bomb to glide. You can actually see here that it appears to be made of some sort of a Soviet-era fab of some kind. It appears to generally be a Fab 250, at least from its general shape, and it was then modified with a glide kit that allows for it to actually glide to its target. This is about the first time that we've ever seen the Ukrainians develop or use a domestically made glide bomb kit like this. So it actually is an innovation for the Ukrainian armed forces to be able to domestically produce and use glide bomb kits such as these. We have also been able to see that the Russians are getting incredibly desperate for ground-based air defense. And this is probably the lowest of the lows that we've seen so far. This is the AK-630, which is an anti-aircraft gun used by the Soviet Navy. And let me show y'all really quickly one of these things in its natural habitat on board a German vessel from East Germany, a country that no longer exists. This is the AK-630 where it actually belongs, on board a vessel. These are pretty much the Russian equivalent of the Sea-Whiz system. But let me see here really quickly. Here's another example of one being used. This is a modernized turret and system for the AK-630, but the gun system itself is still the same. It is a little bit interesting to see that the Russians are running so low on air defense systems that they're actually taking AK-630s and mounting them not only onto Kamaz trucks as a mobile Sea-Whiz system, but they're also mounting them fixed in place on land as well as for an air defense system. This is starting to show us.
Did they not have a level or something? That thing is all crooked and canted off kilter. Look at that thing. It's like it was installed in like 5 minutes or something.
Matthew, we all know that the Russians have a different form of level than us. They're alcoholics. So level is whatever the hell they're leaning towards at the moment, and that's what generally works. But it actually does appear that this thing is not level. You actually are correct on that. And it also appears they're starting to bring these things around a good bit. It is starting to show that the air defense shortage, because they have lost a large amount of air defense systems, is becoming so pressing and so severe that apparently they don't even have enough gush guns anymore to be able to make up for the deficiency, and they're now actually starting to use naval-based CWIS systems mounted onto trucks and also ground-based stationary platforms to provide some form of air defense, at least at the moment. So it is a very sad thing to see, because it's quite clearly showing that the Russians are at the end of the ropes at this point for military equipment. They are having to take anything and everything to be able to try and use on the front. Meanwhile, we also got to see a brand new Ukrainian drone that is able to fly so high it can actually see the curvature of the Earth. It is able to fly up to an altitude of 11 kilometers. Look at the camera view, Matthew. Look at this. You can literally see the curvature of the Earth from here.
That is crazy right there. The flat earthers are going to have a field day with this. This is going to challenge their entire worldview.
Dude, the Ukrainians in war have disproven the flat earthers. Not only are they at war with the Russians, but they're also at war with stupidity. It's impressive, really. We then see it looking up towards the sun. That's going to be the next objective, is for the Ukrainians to be able to fly a drone to the sun. That's the end of that clip, and apparently we got to see the ISR on here at the end of the clip as their outro. But moving on from that interesting development, we also got to see the launch of Ukrainian long-range drones and some of the prior drone attacks that have been conducted against the Russian Federation. This was actually put out by the Ukrainian GRU and also UkraineJet, which is a Ukrainian company that specializes in development and production of drones.
That guy on the left is standing like he's like a mock figure or something. It's hard to tell. It's like it's a scarecrow.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that guy was like standing still.
Look at that little thing go. Look at that. That is pretty cool right there.
Man, they literally take them off like RC planes, and then some of them are also catapult.
Oh wow, it was a jet. Look at that. It was a jet drone. Did you see that? It was that little that new special one that the Ukrainians had made right there, taking off from that catapult.
Really? Like, oh shoot, yeah, it is. It actually is one of those jet-powered drones.
What is that? They call that the Peklo, I think. Let me see here. The Peklo.
It's evading me.
I think it is the Peklo. Pull it up real quick and force here. It's a turbo jet Ukrainian drone. These right here are rare. Like to see that actually taking off, that is actually somewhat rare.
Oh no, the Peklo is like the little mini Tomahawk. Well, let me close down this video.
Palencia.
It's the what?
I think it's the Palencia. I believe this is what this one is. That's the Peklo right there. It has a little turbojet on top of it. I think the Palencia is what it is.
Let's see here. Let me see if I can go find it really quickly. Let's see, Ukrainian drone types. Because we have to get the name of this. We have to get the name of this. It's the Ukrainian drone forces. Actually, it appears that it might actually be a Banshee. Notice the jet thruster right there.
Actually, it's the one right below it, I think. That one that has the question mark on it. I think that's it right there. It's the black carbon shell, or like the fiberglass shell. It's that one.
Oh, yeah, it is actually that one. So we actually don't have the name for that one right there.
I believe that might be a Palencia, which is like a missile / UAV. It's a very unique system. Let's see here. I'm trying to read about it real quick, trying to get some information about it. I think that is, but we don't have much information about that because it's very secretive. But allegedly it was just introduced into the war. So a very rare sighting right there. That's why I wanted to point that out, because I've seen a picture of it laying on the ground, but I've never seen one actually like taking off like that. Very interesting.
And it really is actually quite interesting, honestly. We also got to see some other drones being launched. Actually, that appears to be that unidentified Policia drone flying through the air. And another one being launched as well. It actually appears that there was a large amount of these they filmed. We also get to see their impacts downrange on their targets. They actually are launching a lot of those in this clip.
It's really quite wild to see the evolution of this war over the years that's been going on. They went from using consumer drones to now they've had enough time to develop their own like in-house jet-propelled drones that can go way faster, has longer range, and carries a much larger payload. And also they've got more advanced materials they're using. Like they're using fiberglass and carbon now to develop these things. So they're a lot more light and durable, and that means they can go a longer range too. It's quite. They're actually Ukraine's at the cutting edge of drones at this point, even in comparison to the U.S. Right now.
Also, this is probably their cheapest one yet, but it's also the most effective one, at least in terms of damage. This is actually the A-22, and let me make sure I get the name correct, Foxbat. It actually is the Foxbat. This is actually a Ukrainian light sport aircraft that generally would be used for a fun little day in the skies, that has been modified, and in place of the pilot that would be sitting inside of this plane, they've actually put a pretty significant conventional bomb. So all they do is that they just fly these things into Russia. They can fly about 800 or 900 miles into Russia, as a matter of fact. That's about the farthest end these things have hit. And they are able to come down on a target pretty much without being shot down 9 out of 10 times and slam into the target with about a 250 kilogram, well, actually, I think it's a little bit less than that. I think it's like a 100 kilogram or 150 kilogram bomb on board that explodes on target. So this thing is actually quite damaging. It's one of the cheapest and easiest ones for the Ukrainians to make. It's not custom made at all. It's actually just a modified light sport aircraft, but it is a pretty neat one at that.
Also, Enforcer, I sent you over some schematics of that drone that we just saw taking off, by the way, if you want to see it. Also, I sent you as well in Discord a picture, the first picture I've ever seen of it. That was like, I think a couple of months back, we saw one crash on the ground back in February the 9th of this year. Actually, it could have been, I think maybe last year, late last year, we saw this photo right here. But if you can see it right here on the screen, I can't see your Discord, but it's made of fiberglass. It's got a JetCat P400 Pro, at least according to reports, for the engine. So a pretty fast commercial microjet. It's got about a 20 kilogram blast warhead on the front. And these things are extremely lightweight and very, very fast. And they have a very long range. And that's, like I said, that's a pretty new one right there. So it has a resemblance to the British-built Banshee target drone, which the British have. But this is the in-house Ukrainian version of the same thing.
They call this thing a carbon black. I would assume, like, beyond it being Politsa, they probably call it Pagani Huayra black. But still, pretty neat, I would say. Also, I saw Jane Fontana say, are those the drones that flew 1,100 kilometers into Russia like a year ago? They actually are. The H-22 Foxbats are those very drones. It's actually pretty cool to know how effective they've been so far. And then we could see the impacts downrange. That was actually, remember, Matthew, this is actually one of those videos that someone tried to say, oh my God, it's the Fordo facility. Remember that?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, so this is actually an ammo depot explosion. This is a montage, though, folks, of like the past year of successful drone attacks. All of this didn't happen just recently. Oh, look, there's one of the H-22s. And that's the kind of damage that it causes, by the way. Look at
man, just to see a whole like Cessna flying into a building that's remote control is just I'll never get over that.
Dude, someone went up to Putin. Putin never thought he'd see the day. An advisor came up to him and said, "Mr. President, they have hit the second barracks." And he went, "What the?" Like he was like, "What the hell?" Oh, here comes another one. They love showing those off, and y'all can see the explosive damage is massive from the H-22s.
You just can't get a bigger payload than that. Literally a little small single prop. That's a lot of payload that can carry.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely massive. And these drones have been able to cause significant damage. Once again, folks, this isn't a montage of what's happened over the last week. This is about a montage of what's happened over the last year. But it is one hell of a hilarious thing to see these A-22s, literally just modified light sport planes, bring in about, I think it's something like 300 pounds of explosives every single time. It's literally like having a slow-moving cruise missile at your disposal for pennies on the dollar compared to the cost of a Tomahawk or any other comparable long-range missile system that we have here in the West. It's actually very impressive from a cost perspective.
Michael Nemitz, so that's not a drone, it's an entire plane. It's technically a drone. It is an entire plane, by the way. It is a light sport plane, but they've rigged it up where it has remote control radios on board, and they've rigged up servos to the actual controls of the aircraft. So it's basically a Frankenstein light sport aircraft. It's just been modified with pulleys and motors to actually operate the yoke and operate the rudders as well. So the whole thing is just completely remote controlled.
And really quickly, to share this with you, let me show you. Because actually, it technically is a drone. And I want to try and show you this the best I can. We actually have drones in the U.S. military, as a matter of fact, that are actually quite large. this is a drone-operated F-4 Phantom. In case y'all do not know, when older aircraft get retired, sometimes we actually use them for in-air targeting training, and we will rig them up, much like the Ukrainians would with their drones currently, to be able to fly these kind of like drones. Now, they aren't extremely maneuverable, I have to put that out there. It's not like these things are pulling like AG turns or anything like that. It generally just kind of flies in a straight line after it takes off. It's able to do that itself and manage all of the control surfaces, and then folks are able to come by and shoot these things down. So these F-4 Phantoms, the QF-4s, are quite literally, by definition, while a literal multi-role aircraft, they are actually drones. And so the H-22 Foxbat, while a plane, has been rigged up and modified to actually be operated as a drone. So it does technically qualify as a drone aircraft and not an actual aircraft in the conventional sense. So kind of neat. Also, I would love to be one of the people in the Air Force that gets to launch one of these things, because I think that once you have this high, you'll never look at RC planes the same way again after having a literal F-4, a real F-4 as your RC plane. That'd be pretty cool. But moving on from that, and outside of the Ukrainian drones, we also have been able to see the heroes of the Russian Federation today, and they were impressively just brave, heroic. Watch the video. Y'all will see the heroes of Russia in full form.
Благодарим всех участвующих в сборе средств на данную мототехнику. Благодаря вам мы своевременно осуществляем доставку провизии и БК на линии боеприкосновения. Победа!
Go, great hero of Russia! Yeah!
Oh my god, he dumped it. He dumped the clutch. What a goofy. What's that? His first time riding a motorcycle or something? That's like a rookie mistake right there.
Oh my god, I do not know, dude, but look at him.
Будет за нами!
Oh my god. What kind of tires are on that thing, man? Was it like inflatable like balloon tires or something? Like, look at how that tire like folded in like when the guy started like dumping the clutch. Like, watch that again.
Победа!
Look at that back tire.
Oh my
god.
god.
Look at that. The thing literally like was like an inflatable balloon. It like crushed in on itself, and this guy's like wheeling the thing out of control. This is like goofy as hell.
Oh my god. Dude, you know what those wheels are like? They're like the giant like the giant wheels that you put on bush planes in Alaska. That's almost like what they put on this motorcycle.
Yeah, really. And also they had that thing weighted down. Like look how that thing's like leaning off to the left. It's wheeling, and somehow the guy's not falling off of it. It's almost like a circus trick.
Oh my god, bro. This is like the Ringling Brothers Circus. I had to include this clip, folks, because it was one of the funniest ones of the day, without a doubt. Let's watch it one more time.
Победа будет за нами!
Oh my god! I feel like they got that guy got set up by those other two. They seemed like they were waiting for something to happen. Like they knew something was about to go down. They set this guy up.
Oh my god, dude. I think they did, honestly. I think they did. We're going to watch it one more time, folks, because we like to have a good laugh here and there. We'll watch it one more time. We'll get on to the Frontline analysis. But y'all gotta admit, folks, that comedy like this doesn't come easy. This is way better than America's Funniest Home Videos. That's for sure. So let's watch it one more time.
Победа будет за нами!
Oh my god.
And now the handlebars are bent. Now the brake handle's messed up. Now the bikes are ruined, basically, because they're not gonna be able to fix it.
Oh man, and that guy also brings us right into the casualty report. I believe he actually is included as a wounded, I believe, in the casualty report. But nevertheless, Ms. Deasy, keeper of the record, stated the troop losses have dropped below 1,000 for today. Artillery, drones, and vehicle losses continue to accumulate at above average levels. And it does appear that we are able to confirm that vehicular losses and at least casualties of personnel have increased due to actions of poor repute by the Russian armed forces. We have been able to confirm that 950 Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 6 APCs, 122 vehicles and supply trucks, including the motorcycle in that video that's now 123, 1 main battle tank, 58 artillery pieces, 131 drones, and 1 MLRS. It was a pretty decent day. It does appear that things were pretty alright, at least for the Ukrainian armed forces and their defense of the Ukrainian state, and largely Europe, at least for now, although that might start to change in the future. Moving on from that and on down into the area of the Sebronsky Forest, we also got to see the Russians are so desperate for any sort of parts for usable multiple mechanized equipment, including just cars, they're actually going up to destroy the Ladas now and attempting to salvage parts from the engines to be able to keep their other cars in service running, because there's that much of a shortage of any kind of motors or mechanized components, or motorized components for that matter, throughout the entirety of the Russian armed forces.
Вот машина. Сейчас постараемся с нее еще снять все, что осталось. В багажник еще применить можно.
Лебедку, если живая, то заберем. По ходовке, может быть, там редуктор снимем. Опять же, если живое все.
Как видите, братцы, мы пытаемся использовать все, что даже при таком состоянии есть узлы, которые мы не оставим. Будем снимать. Все идет в ход.
That's the end of that clip, but we can see that they're starting to get a little desperate. Oh, by the way, really quickly, a lot of people have been hearing Khamenei has been hiding, and he hasn't been seen still. What are people thinking about that, Matthew? Like, I know we're in the middle of the Ukraine war segment, but what are y'all all thinking about that? The fact that Khamenei still hasn't come out of his bunker yet, and it's been about about 36 hours since the ceasefire went in effect.
Okay, so this is a big point of discussion right now. And actually, I just got this news right now during the stream. That's why I ran a poll on it. Right now, the Iranian leadership is sounding the alarm. This is coming from the Iranians, by the way, the political insiders inside of the Iranian government. They are concerned because Khamenei has not been seen or heard of in 7+ days. And he's been apparently hiding away, or something's happened to him. And it's got the Iranian officials freaked out. It's got the Iranian public freaked out. And Khamenei has gone radio silent. So he's not saying anything. So people want to know where he's at and what are your thoughts about it. So 44% said he's frozen with fear and he's in deep hiding because, of course, we did hear reports that he was scared to even communicate because he was worried Israel was going to find him and get him. So 24% said Khamenei might actually be deceased, and 20% said he might have fled Iran and went to a different country. So right now, we simply do not know. The last we had heard, Khamenei was hiding somewhere in a bunker. We weren't told exactly which bunker it was. We believe maybe he was in the Lavazan neighborhood in Tehran in a bunker there, but we never got confirmation of that. And now he's been radio silent for 7+ days, and there's no sign of him coming out. So some people are saying he's dead. Some people are saying he's simply hiding because he's so scared he's trembling to even leave the bunker. Nobody's really sure. I'm actually kind of on the fence. I'm going to say I'm actually with the 12%. I'm actually unsure from the few times ever, and I'm going to withhold judgment because right now it's kind of hard to tell where he's at. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that, in my opinion, I think the Khamenei is actually frozen with fear and in deep hiding. It's a little bit interesting that the leader of the country that likes to claim that people are martyred the most is scared of getting martyred. Don't y'all find that a little bit ironic? Because we do know that he's hiding in a bunker somewhere. We were able to confirm that Israel didn't kill him in the strike on Lavazan at least a while ago. So he's alive, from what we understand at the moment. He's out there somewhere, and he's just not coming out of the bunker. So I would generally say he's got to be incredibly scared. This is honestly showing how scared the guy really is, because for him to talk all of that loud talk, he sure as hell gets scared when the Israelis or the Americans actually show up with the intent of possibly bombing him.
Yeah, these guys don't really believe what they're saying. Like, I don't believe for a second the Ayatollah truly believes that he wants to become a martyr. Like, all these people that are typically leaders of these extremist organizations, they're master manipulators. That's what they are. They're good at telling other people, oh, like, you go become a martyr. But me, I can't become a martyr, though, because I have to lead the cause. And they always exclude themselves from the group when it really comes down to, like, you know, it's time to actually show your worth, basically, and also practice what you preach. People like the Ayatollah, people like the Hamas leadership, people like the Yemeni, the rebel leadership, they all back down at the last second. They want their underlings to go out and sacrifice themselves, but they won't because they're cowards and they're manipulators. So, yeah, he's showing his true colors here, and I'm sure that that's probably angering some people that's underneath his command.
And I would have to agree. I also just saw Avery say bros at Topgolf. Maybe, but I feel like Khamenei would be throwing out a hip and martyring his hips for trying to play Topgolf. So I'm doubting that he would be martyring his hips to get the swing in at Topgolf. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are going to be moving on from that question, considering that was just a developing story right there. And we also got to see the 5th Separate Assault Brigade taking down some Russian drones. Take a look at this. This was some clear camera footage taken from this Ukrainian drone. They caught this Russian drone lacking in 4K Ultra HD. And there goes the Russian drone.
It's like a replica of a Switchblade drone almost.
Honestly, it kind of was. Yeah, that's what I was thinking a little bit. I just wasn't going to mention it. But we also got to see a ride with the 93rd. Take a look at this. We see them taking a break under a bridge for a moment. He's actually talking about how they escaped some drones. We can actually see the Ukrainians are using an ATV with trailer to transport a small fire team around.
Yeah, that guy right there in the top's gonna have knee problems guaranteed.
Oh, yeah. It actually appears that this group is largely using AKMs and also has a semi-automatic shotgun as well. But this
they better hope that guy driving the ATV's got some good skills. Uh-oh.
Oh, no.
They better hope he's driving good. I'll tell you what.
He seems really excited to be driving it. They better watch out. Like, that's all I can say. Every time someone ever seems excited to drive an ATV, it might not be good business. But that's actually the famous Fighting 93rd, folks. We don't really get to see a lot of clips from them anymore, but some of y'all may actually know the famous Fighting 93rd from their liberation of the Kharkiv Oblast way back in the the latter part of 2022, where, let me make sure that I remember this, the Balaklia offensive was conducted. It's also been called the Kharkiv offensive of late 2022, but I generally call it the Balaklia offensive because the main offensive axes revolved around Balaklia in the opening hours of the offensive. They were the main brigade that actually led that push and pushed the Russians all the way back across the Severetsky Donetsk River, or the Oskil River seen here, and into the area near to the town of Terny. They actually were the ones responsible for that, and we have a lot of respect for the Fighting 93rd because their brigade was responsible for one of the largest offensive successes that the Ukrainians have ever had in the conflict so far. Since then, they've largely been on the battlefields of Bakhmut, and they still are to this day. Outside of that, we also got to see near to Toretsk that Russian forces have been bombed by a Ukrainian bombing strike. We can actually see that right here. And they slammed them. Quite efficiently, I'd say.
Slammed them pretty good. It's just always crazy to look down at these videos at this point and see the green grass and the green shrubbery everywhere. Like, it just throws me off guard every time because I'm so used to it looking like the dead of winter, like, for so long. It catches me off guard. I'm like, are we looking at Ukraine or what are we looking at here? And then I realize, okay, it's summer again and it's turned green.
Yeah, I mean, it's really weird because honestly, it felt like the last winter lasted forever. It pretty much started like in the fall last year, and then it went all the way into like the late spring this year. It was incredibly cold over there, actually, over the course of this winter, and it actually stopped a decent amount of the heavier fights and turned them into smaller battles. Even the battles of Pokrovsk and Toretsk were fairly smaller during that time. We also got to see Ukrainian BM-21 Grad firing around the area as well. I had to repeat that. Like, I couldn't help it. Oh, you see the Grad actually firing from within the tree line. This also has the risk of creating a forest fire.
They've got a nice bundle of kindling right here off to the left side of the truck just for that forest fire.
Dude, they said, not only are we firing at the Russians, we're firing up this forest. Smokey the Bear is out having a conniption fit right now over this one.
What's he running off like that for? What, did he get burned or something?
I don't even know. He was booking it, though. But moving on from that clip and on down towards Pokrovsk, we also got to see a Ukrainian pickup MLRS in use. The video says that this is somewhat new. We've actually seen these in service for years now, but this is one of the few times we've ever seen one in use recently. We believe, Matthew, that this is actually mounted onto a Toyota or a Nissan. Would I be correct in saying that?
That looks like it could be. It's kind of hard to tell from this angle, I'll be honest, but I think I'm leaning toward that could actually be a Ford, actually. I really can't tell, though. It looks like maybe a Ford.
Oh, dang. But we can see the Ukrainians using it here to launch a small MLRS volley.
I almost want to say a Ford Maverick, but I can't really tell what the hell that is. Like, I wish I had a closer up view. Somebody's saying it's a Toyota. I don't know. Like a Toyota Hilux, Toyota, that's typically what the Ukrainians would have as a Hilux. That doesn't really look like a Hilux.
And someone said, does that come standard? No, not really. That's usually called an aftermarket kit. But moving on from that and out of that clip and further on down the line and into Zaporizhzhia near to Robotny, we also got to see Ukrainian airstrikes being conducted by MiG-29s on Russian positions within this area of the Zaporizhzhia front. When you see the Russians going inside this building, confirming that there are combatants within the building, and the Ukrainians have decided to take the American philosophy of just leveling the entire grid coordinate where those Russians were seen. You will now see this in this following part of the clip. There goes the glide bomb, and here comes the pain. And there goes the grid coordinate. Those Russians had better days, but it appears that this one was their last. We see the building.
Oh, yeah, that sucks.
Yeah, it does appear that that building was pretty much completely destroyed. And moving on out of that, we have been able to say, just to give you all a general frontline summary as well, the Ukrainians generally have control of the front in Sumy. We've also seen that the Ukrainians have been holding the Russians back in the Kupiansk front, in the Severonsky front, and the Chasiv Yar and Toretsk front, which is now being consolidated into the Konstantinivka front at the moment. We've also seen that they've held them back in Pokrovsk. Russian forces are making gradual advances through the Zaporizhia plain near to the area of Bahatir and Constantinople. At the moment, that is not Constantinople in the Byzantine Empire. That is the Constantinople of the Donetsk region in Ukraine, just to make that a little bit clear. And we also understand the Russian Federation forces are not making any advances near to Robotyne and Kamyanske, as Ukrainian defenses are holding solid here. So out of the major fronts that we are seeing at the moment, Ukraine is actually taking the initiative or holding them off in all fronts except for one, which would be the Bahatir and Constantinople front at the moment. So the Ukrainians, at least on a battlefield analysis at the moment, are actually doing quite well on the defensive and offensive. But with that, it is time for us to move on into the second segment of this stream, where we get to talk to all of y'all, because that actually rounds out our news summary for the day. We've actually been able to cover every single major news event that has happened around the world so far in the past 24 hours. And if you have enjoyed this greatly, I highly encourage you to subscribe. I can actually see that there are 19,000 people here by the end of our news segment, and if there are 19,000 people here who have enjoyed watching this channel for an hour and 50 minutes, then I expect that you would probably enjoy this channel for many great more hours. We run streams like these every single day at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, and we also run breaking news streams whenever any major news starts to develop in the middle of the day. If you enjoy these kinds of news summaries every night at 10 p.m. Eastern Time for the past 24-hour news cycle incredibly well, or you would like to be around to hear about those breaking news developments when they are actually happening in real time in the world, make sure to subscribe, because we are always covering those at every given moment whenever anything happens, and you can always guarantee that you will be able to get the news of the day's goings-on and activities here on this channel as well. But with that in mind, it is time for us to move on into the question segment, where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. I also have to point out that there is no speech from President Zelensky today to allow us to have a halftime show. That's generally what the speech is used for. The president of Ukraine is currently inside of the Hague in the Netherlands, just got done speaking with the president of the United States. It appears that that went quite well. But due to those activities that he's been taking on today in the western part of Europe, he has not been able to make a speech, so we do not have one to show here on the channel. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. I also just saw Booker say hot tub stream at 500,000. Now, I was actually thinking we would start making YouTube shorts where we go around like drinking and smoking at the same time in every single short. I was thinking that also would be a great idea as well. But with that, we are on to the questions. What do we got, Matthew?
All right, so moving on to our question segment right here. It's now time to jump right back into our super chats and start addressing all the good donations of the night and our live chats as well. So jumping right back into it, this one goes to Mr. Glock, who's there, LSA, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Mr. Glock, for that support. He said, will the POTUS crank up the sanctions on the Russian Federation and LSA?
It's always hard to say what's going to be coming around the pipe. I do want to say, and I also want to make this quite clear that this isn't political. This is more so for an analytical and analysis side of things. It is very hard to follow the president's actions consistently. As far as we can assess here on the channel, and as far as our analysis goes behind the scenes for the prior few months of the new administration, the way that we can describe foreign policy actions generally appears to mostly be bipolar. And that's not supposed to be said in a negative or positive light. That's just generally how we've assessed it, because an action can be taken today that is hostile, and then the next action's taken tomorrow or a reconciliatory, and as a matter of fact, putting us at odds with the very allies that we were supporting yesterday. For example, with the Israel-Iran conflict, we went from bombing the Iranians to the Iranians then attacked us, and then on that very day, we went from ramping up the pressure like we said we would several days ago to now, okay, now there will be forever peace in the region, amen and hallelujah. And it was a very big sort of a switch. It was a literal 180 from our position just the day before that, or 2 days before that, more so. So it's really hard to say if we're going to be ramping up the sanctions against the Russian Federation because of that kind of bipolar sort of decision making, where one thing could fly one day and then the next day it doesn't. But I would generally say that, at least in my opinion, if we weren't factoring that in, I believe that sanctions are inevitable against the Russian Federation. We've already seen that all prior sanctions against the Russian Federation have been signed back into effect by the president at prior dates. So all of the current sanctions that were imposed by the Biden administration are still in place under the Trump administration. It's just a question of, will there be more added on to those? Because those are still going to be in place for another year. And so far, I would say it's hard to tell, but if I had to go with my gut feeling, I feel like the answer is inevitably going to be yes. It just is a matter of time until we get to that point. That's what I'm thinking at the moment. But I do hope that doesn't.
It seems like Putin's going to force his hand on this one, because I don't think at this point it's really not a matter of the president wanting to put sanctions on the Russians or not. Putin has gone berserk. Like the statements he made at that Russian press conference, coming out and saying that any land that the Russian soldier steps on is now Russia's territory officially. That was a bad statement to make. Also, Putin said something to effect of, we're going to take Ukraine no matter who's standing in the way. He also made statements like that as well. And now he's making, obviously there's these like rumors in the background, and also intel indicating that Putin wants to also go and start invading NATO countries as well, which seems to be corroborated because now the president's also repeating that himself. It seems like Putin is pushing the envelope so far now because he's getting so comfortable feeling that there's no repercussions for anything that he can keep pushing the envelope. So I think really, honestly, it seems like our foreign policy is more reactive at this point. Once an adversary like Putin starts pushing the envelope, then we're basically forced at that point to start putting sanctions on them, start ramping up support for Ukraine. And we're just really reactive. We're not proactive. But, eventually, though, it will result in sanctions, and it will also result in more aid packages going to Ukraine before very long.
I would agree. I think that's largely going to be how it works. It really is how it works at the moment, at least with how we're reacting. We're not proactive at all. And I'd also have to say that the prior administration wasn't proactive at all. The general prevailing precedent since if we're speaking for the 21st century as a whole, there's only been 4 presidents in the 21st century. There was Bush, Obama, Biden, and Trump. And out of all 4 of them, the first 2 were heavily proactive. I'd actually would say, no one can disagree that the invasion of Iraq in 2003 under Bush was a proactive measure, and not really a reactive one, or the invasion of Afghanistan as well, for that matter. And also, some could say quite easily that Obama was also proactive in foreign policy, with conducting the actions that we saw in the significant drone strikes that were conducted literally across the whole Middle East against anyone who was aligned with terrorist forces. But the past 2 administrations, and the Biden and Trump administration from 2016 to the present day, have been a lot more reactive than proactive, like we saw at the very beginning of the century that we're in right now. So I would have to say that probably will be the case, what Matthew's saying, and we'll most likely see that our hand is forced by the Russians more so than us kind of setting the tempo or setting the atmosphere that we want in Eastern Europe. The Russians are kind of setting it, and we're really just responding to it. We would get the same result either way. It's just a matter of how that end result is reached at the moment. But with that, I hope that does address it the best we can, at least from our analysis side of things. And a big thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Glock who's there. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, it is time for us to move on into the next one.
Also, isn't it kind of ironic? I just want to make this comment real quick. Putin is a psychopath, by the way. I don't know if a psychologist could look at Putin and say for a fact what is he clinically diagnosed with, but clearly Putin is either a psychopath, a sociopath, or something like that. He's clearly got some psychological thing like that going on, because the actions he takes have no empathy for other people whatsoever, no regard for life, and he's obviously, in my opinion, I think he's a psychopath. that psychopath couldn't even keep up the charade that he was pulling off with the United States president long enough to keep Russia in the president's good graces. He couldn't even keep that mask up anymore. He could still, in my opinion, arguably still keep basically pulling the U.S. along and keep fooling the United States into basically staying on the fence about Ukraine. But Putin can't even maintain the mask anymore because that psychopath can't keep it up for too long. He's just letting the whole thing go, and he's saying exactly what he thinks. Isn't that wild? He can't even do that for his own self-advantage. He can't even keep it up.
Much like many, because Hitler and Stalin were also just like that as well, if you remember, Matthew. Remember how Hitler and Stalin, both also psychopaths of pretty much the same magnitude as Putin, were able to try and court each other with the Molotov-Ribbentrop Act to divide up Poland in 1939, and then afterwards, both of them were scheming quietly in the background to invade the other. Did you know, Matthew, that the Soviet Union actually was starting to draw up plans about a couple of months before the beginning of Operation Barbarossa to start a war with Nazi Germany preemptively instead? Did you know that?
I didn't know that, but I'm not shocked though, because like a key like hallmark of being a psychopath is they're extremely paranoid. They always think that everybody's coming after them. Even their closest friends, family, etc., believe that their friends are going to come and kill them one day. That's how paranoid these people are. And that's why Putin, like, for example, when things got a little bit rough in Russia, he locked himself away from all of his close advisors, all of his friends and family. He locked himself away. And that's why he got the term bunker boy, because he was hiding himself away in the Kremlin and nobody could even get close to him. He got these extremely long tables. That way, if he had to meet with somebody physically, they'd be like 20 feet away on the other side of this massive table that was absurdly long. That's like a hallmark of these people. Same thing with Hitler. He was the same type of mindset. Those psychopaths all have these like same traits. And unfortunately, they know how to climb their way to the top really easy. So they get to these positions. They can be very charismatic, and they get to these political positions, and then they start wreaking havoc on anybody they can possibly get their hands on. It's really quite scary.
Yeah, it really is scary, actually. I would agree, because we've had experience with people like that. But beyond that, I would also have to say, to another degree, that it's really crazy to think that he couldn't keep it up for that long. He only kept it up for, what was it, 3 months? It wasn't even.
Yeah, he could only keep it up for like a few months. That's it. And that's the crazy part. Now, it was easier for Putin to keep the mask up because Putin's been like fooling the West since the year 2000. Like pretty much ever since Putin took charge in Russia, he's been like very, very subtly like trying to like keep the West thinking that Russia is democratic, keep the West thinking that, oh, well, you know, we're just like trying to grow our economy. We're just trying to thrive as the new Russian country, not the Soviet Union. We're trying to be a new Russia. And the U.S. and the West knew that it was generally not totally perfectly good, but they were pulled along just enough by Putin to believe, oh, well, we can be like, you know, distant friends with Russia since the year 2000 to the present until he invaded Ukraine, and we can sort of coexist peacefully. But the whole time that Putin was doing that, it wasn't that intensive for him, because it was very light manipulation. But now, with this current situation with the Ukraine, he's having to do heavy manipulation on the current U.S. president to keep him basically on the fence. And he couldn't keep it up for more than like 3 or 4 months. He had to let it go, and now he's like full-on psychopath mode. He's not even hiding it at this point.
Yeah, I would have to say. Also, I saw someone say he's a well-trained spy. Yeah, I don't know, because he was really more so in a KGB office in East Germany, from what I heard correctly.
Paper pusher.
Yeah, he was more so like a bureaucrat in the KGB. He wasn't really one of the field officers, or, you know, the James Bond in the Soviet Union in the KGB. He was more so just a bureaucrat guy who just kind of filled in a paper pushing office job, and then the Soviet Union collapsed, and then he was out of the job. He actually was out of the job in East Germany after Germany had already unified. So imagine the deal and the confusion that was involved in having a quietly operating KGB office in the modern-day Federal Republic of Germany at that point, in 1991, when the Soviet Union collapsed, and having to find a way to pretty much escape Germany without letting the Germans know there was still an operational KGB office inside their country. That was an interesting sort of one. But beyond that, he's not some sort of a cool, level-headed mastermind, folks, because we've watched him astutely here on the channel for the past 3 years, 3.5 years, as a matter of fact. We're about to get into 4, and there is just no way the guy's a mastermind, folks. We watch him talk, we watch what he says, his logic, all of that stuff. The guy honestly comes off as an idiot who's had this really good propaganda spin machine around him for decades at this point, since he took the office of the president in 2000, and they have made him into this amazing chess-like mastermind. It feeds a lot into the Russian propaganda, or the idea that Putin is this great leader. He's not. He's not at all. Most Russians still live in poverty. The country is a shithole. It's not even an exaggeration. It is a terrible place to be. It's a terrible place to live. The guy is also not even that good of a leader. I mean, think about it. How much has the average Russian's lives outside of Moscow and St. Petersburg improved over the past 25 years? The truth is that it's hardly improved at all. If you go and look at Russia in the year 2000 in any average city or village that isn't Moscow or St. Petersburg, and you go and look at them in the year 2000 and in 2025 today, there is literally no difference between them at all. The roads are in the same condition. The city ordinances and officials are in the same position. They're pretty much run by the mafia still. I mean, it's just a load of crap that the Russians put out about their country and their leader. It's not a country to look up to or admire at all. I don't admire a single thing about Russia. There are some neat cultural aspects of the Russian Federation. For example, ballet, which is specifically endemic to the Russian cultural group. Not the Ukrainians, interesting enough. The Ukrainians do not do ballet. The Russians, specifically as a cultural group, are the only ones to do ballet. That's kind of interesting to some degree, but beyond that, there isn't really much more to their country on an actual quality of living or governmental level that makes them to be a country of envy. The Russian would marvel, the average Russian would marvel at your normal interstate rest stop street with the McDonald's and stuff on it if they saw it. That doesn't even exist in Russia. Like that is viewed by Americans as like an armpit. It's just a place. It's just something you pass by. Dime a dozen, there's a million of them, they're not worth looking at. To the Russian, however, that is pretty much the same kind of creature circumference that you would find in St. Petersburg, and it's all on a single street, and you see thousands of those in America. So that's kind of the divide between the Russians and us. And you also have to remember another thing, too, as well, is that there are some people here in America that also have, for some reason, an invested interest in making our adversaries look like they're better than us. I'm specifically speaking to Tucker Carlson, who's largely the biggest proponent of this at this point, and that he went to the Russian Federation. He tried to make them look like they were better than America. He went into one of the nicest grocery stores in the city of Moscow, one of the newest and most modern, and he tried to make it sound like that was the average grocery store experience for a Russian. The reality is that most Russians don't even see a grocery store. In most of Russia, there are no grocery stores. That is something that you'll find in the major metropolises of over several million people, but in most Russian cities of several 100,000 people, there is seldom ever a grocery store, and at most times, they are actually pretty bad looking. On top of that, the other thing is that, yes, Tucker Carlson was correct. The Russians' groceries are, on average, 3 times cheaper than America's groceries. But what he also forgot to omit is that the median household income in the Russian Federation is 5 times less than the median household income here in the United States. So they're making 5 times less money, and they're also paying 3 times less for their groceries. But when you actually math the math there, on average, at least for their average standard of living and average income in Russia, they're actually paying more for their groceries per percentage of their monthly income than an American would, meaning that Tucker Carlson is largely putting out pro-Russian propaganda. It's not based in fact, it's based in fiction. For an American, that sounds great. For a real Russian living in the Russian Federation, it is abysmal. It is a hell. Most of your money actually goes into buying groceries, unlike here in America, where a smaller portion of your money goes into groceries. It is just stuff like that.
And also not to mention as well that the average Russian who doesn't have much cash savings, if any at all, like if you think Americans have a problem with saving money, because right now, I think the average American barely has anything in their savings account. That's just like the national average at this point. Most people live paycheck to paycheck in America. If you think that's bad, then look at Russia. Sometimes they don't even have enough to make ends meet every single month. And then they have to go buy the groceries, even though they're cheaper, like the enforcer's saying, they're still costing more than their income by a long shot. And then if the Russians want to buy something, like, for example, a vehicle or a home or some type of apartment or something like that, the interest rate in Russia is like 20+%. So they can't even afford to get a loan because, yeah, they can't even afford to get a loan. The interest rate is too expensive. They can't even afford to borrow money in Russia, like the average civilian there. It's really crazy. But at the same time, though, if it weren't for the threat of the FSB knocking on your door, I wonder what Putin's actual approval rating would be. Because in Russia, it does not work the same on the public perceptions sphere that it does in America. And of course, there's a huge element of freedom of speech in Russia. You don't have freedom of speech there. If you say something that's against Putin, you're basically playing with your life. That's what happens, and everybody knows that. But if it weren't for that fear, I wonder what the numbers would look like for approval or disapproval of Putin, because they seem to value strength a lot in Russia. They put a huge emphasis on that. And that's why you'll see Putin riding horseback without a shirt on, because he knows that appeals to the average Russian male that is obviously influencing the politics in Russia quite a bit. So I've always wondered, I've always been curious what a real poll of the Russian public would look like for Putin.
Like, let me go show you this. This is actually probably the greatest comparison that we can make between Russia and the United States. Let's pick a Russian town. We're not going to pick Moscow. We're not going to pick St. Petersburg, because that's pretty much picking the cream of the crop. Let's pick a normal Russian town, like Oktябrьsky. How about we pick this one? And let's just take a look at an average street in this town. So this is what the average neighborhood looks like in Russia. This we can
look at that house though. Look at that. Look, there's like a brand new house here on the left. There's a brand new house on the right in the middle of like a dirt pit. It's crazy.
And it's surrounded by Ladas, which is the craziest thing. These cars were this specific style was discontinued at the collapse of the Soviet Union, and yet these are still the common kind of car you'll even find around new constructions. But this is what
I think that's the workers. I think that might be the workers there, because it looks like they're putting bricks on this house. Like where is this again? Like, where is this like located? Like in the general scheme of things?
This is in the Republic of Bashkortostan in Oktябrьsky, which is south of well, it's a little bit west of Ufa, but it's south of let's see here. Shit, where? Sorry, everyone. I didn't mean to. Let me think right there. So it's south of Naberezhny Chelny, west of Ufa, and then east of Tolyatti. So this is literally just like anywhere Russia, pretty much.
Yeah, believe it or not, that house that we were just looking at there, that was actually a extremely upscale house. That's why I was asking where this was, because that house that we just saw right there, that is like your top 1% if you're living in a house like that in Russia, that one we just saw right there.
But here's another, and here's any street in this town of Oktябrьsky, and this looks like hell. I think anyone here in America would say that this looks near unlivable compared to what we expect here in the United States. Now, with that in mind, let's go to anywhere USA. And once again, folks, I want to make this clear. I didn't cherry pick this. We just picked a town at random. I've never looked at this town on Street View before. But this is what it actually looks like living in Russia. That's what it actually looks like. So let us go from here in Russia. And if people don't believe me, let me know in the chat if you don't believe me. We can pick another Russian town and show y'all another average Russian town if you don't believe me here. But I feel like this once is good enough. But for now, at least. Unless if we see a lot of people in the chat saying, that seems like it's not a good enough polling base, we'll go find another town. But let's go from Oktябrьsky. And let's go to, I don't know, say, you know what, we'll really try and stack the cards in favor of Russia. Let's go to one of the poorest states in the United States, which is West Virginia. Let's do that. And let's go to a town that seems comparable in size, which is Parkersburg. And let's drop down on an average neighborhood street in the town of Parkersburg. And this is what the average neighborhood in the United States would generally look like. Actually, this is an average neighborhood in one of the poorest states in the United States. And it looks far better. Like, there's no doubt about it. Like, this by American standards is actually getting on the rougher side, and it still looks way better than what we just saw in Russia. So it's a little bit shocking with that. Let's go to an actual affluent sort of a place. So let's go up here into the Pacific Northwest, just to pick something. And we'll pick Yakima in Washington. Let's pick Yakima, and let's go into any given neighborhood in Yakima. Like, right here. And this is what a more affluent area of the United States looks like in comparison to what we just saw in Russia. And this is not a gem town. This isn't a crown jewel sort of a city. This is just any average anywhere town USA sort of a deal. And it's way better. It's way nicer. But I see a lot of people actually say, well, compare another Russian town. We want to see another one. Okay, well, let's just pick one then. Let's keep it in Western Russia. We're going to stack the odds in Russia's favor. Western Russia, specifically southwestern Russia, is one of the wealthiest areas of the Russian Federation. So, let's pick the town of Saransk. This is a larger town, an industrial town, mostly still works around industrial concerns. We're not going to go into the heavier built-up high-rise areas that were built by the communists. We're going to go into the lower density residential areas around here. So let's drop down and let's see what it looks like. So this is once again average Russia in Saransk in the Mordovia Republic. That's what it looks like. This looks like
Go
hell.
up the street a little bit. And also another thing you notice here that you do see in American places and you don't see here is the vehicle ownership in Russia must be dramatically lower than America, because you rarely ever see vehicles just sitting in the driveways here, which either indicates they don't have a vehicle, maybe it could be they're just at work, or maybe the theft is so high that they have to put them inside or behind a fence or behind some type of wall or something because people are going to break into it. But let me pull that up. What is the vehicle ownership rate in Russia?
It's low.
I'm
it's like, I think it's
that.
like in the 30s or something like that.
So let's see. In Russia, nearly half of all adults own a car, with 47% of those surveyed reporting ownership. So about 53% of Russians do not own a car. Compared to America, let's see what that is. Let's compare that. America. So it looks like in America, 90% of households own at least one car in America. And that's just at least one car. Like multiple households actually have two or three in America. So that also is a huge indicator of economic hardship when people can barely get a car in Russia. And when they finally do get a car in Russia, it's usually a beater. It's like an old Lada from decades back that they have to keep tinkering on a daily basis to keep it running. So that's another huge indicator of widespread poverty in Russia.
I would have to say so. And I mean, also, by the way, folks, just to put this out there, your average Russian makes a year $9,800 to $9,900 annually as their median income, compared to the median income in America, which is about $48,000. So they are making 5 times less than the average American. When you put it into perspective like that, it's a little crazy. And I actually saw someone say that we're delusional for saying that this looks like hell in the chat. I generally am seeing that everyone in the chat is saying that this looks like Detroit, and I would have to agree. This place looks pretty rough.
You say it looks like Detroit. I would say, honestly, this is a step down from Detroit. Like, I would say the worst suburb or neighboring town to Detroit, I believe, would be Gary. Would be Gary, actually. Yeah, Indiana. That would be the worst looking place I could think of that's in America, one of the most degraded areas. But even in my opinion, this right here looks slightly worse than Gary. Not by much, but slightly worse.
Well, also, I got to put this out there for folks. Detroit looks like hell because there's no major industry. The monolithic industry, which was the auto industry that existed in Detroit, has left. So the economy of the city collapsed. The city of Gary, Indiana used to have a major amount of steel manufacturers in it. A lot of those left. That's why Gary collapsed. The city of Saransk still has operating industrial concerns within its city confines, which make up a significant part of the city's actual income. So this is a working city. This is not a city that has an economy that's collapsed. The economy is working just fine here in Saransk, and that's what it still looks like with an actual functioning local economy. That's horrendous. If you go to any city in America that has some sort of a functioning local economy for their city that actually generates revenue for the city and for the people living and working there, it looks pretty decent. It looks way better than anything we're seeing in Russia. And, and once again, I'm only doing this, folks, and traveling around Russia and showing all this. It's because people like Tucker put out dangerous narratives that these terrible leaders like Putin actually do good for their country. Look at those streets that we just looked at in Saransk and Oktyabrskyi and tell me that that looks like Putin is actually doing good for his people. That looks like shit. Like that there's no other way to look at it than it's terrible. It's absolutely horrendous. You know what? Let's pick.
Wait a minute. Also, by the way, some people are calling us out. Some people are saying, "I bet you've never been to Mississippi." Our family lives in Mississippi. I used to go to Mississippi as a child and through my teenager years, literally every single year, multiple times a year. And I'm talking about the backwoods Mississippi. I'm talking about like the back areas that nobody's ever even heard of. That type of Mississippi. I'm talking about like if you've ever heard of it, like the Shibuya area of Mississippi and that whole area, very backwoods. You'll find nice people out there. Not like commenting on the people. Like there's nice people out there. there, but it's very backwoods and widespread poverty, like a lot of it. That's where like most of our family lived. It was out there. A lot of family in Mississippi from my mother's side. So that was one place. Also, we grew up in Alabama, also in the sort of backwood area of Alabama as well. So we're not unfamiliar with what poverty looks like because we grew up around a lot of it. But it does not compare to Russia. Like Russia is a whole nother level. Like it's a lot worse. It looks a lot worse and doesn't even compare to Mississippi if you're using Mississippi as a baseline.
And also, folks, I got to point this out. I see some people are like, oh, why don't you go to the hoods here in America? I'm not doing that because here's the reason why. I'm comparing baseline Russia. So anywhere Russia versus anywhere USA. I'm not trying to pick the cherry-picked nicest place in Russia versus the cherry-picked worst place in America. We're literally just picking random places in both countries and comparing them. Like that's what I'm doing. Because yes, I do know that there are bad places in America, and we haven't strayed away from that at all. We just admitted a second ago that Detroit generally looks like hell. Most of it's abandoned, and so do other places like Gary, Indiana. They also do look like hell. They're pretty rough places, but the local economy in those cities completely collapsed. They imploded. There's hardly anything left holding up the city as far as revenue or as far as a population living and working there that is affluent enough to spend a little bit of extra money to make their place look nicer. That stuff doesn't exist there anymore, so those are cherry-picked examples. We are actually going to cities in Russia that still have functioning local economies, so there's money being pumped through their municipal system, and they still look like that. And someone said, go look at Portland, Oregon. Like, I see a lot of people trying to cherry pick bad places in America to make a point, but I'm not going to do that because let me show you this. Better yet, I'll go to the primo example. Let's go to Moscow, Российской Федерации. Let's go to Moscow really quickly, and let's go look at anywhere Russian Federation, Moscow. So let's go look, not in downtown Moscow. Let's go out to the periphery. Let's go out to about right here. Why don't we see what it looks like here? Looks like this.
This isn't bad looking, I will say. Like for Moscow, like this is where the elites are at. Honestly, this right here looks like Leeds, Alabama. Like that little place off to the left over there, the little strip mall area and the street and everything. It looks like you're about to drive through Leeds. And if you're familiar with Alabama, Leeds is considered like it's like a suburb city of Birmingham, I guess you could call it that. And it's a little bit country. It's a little bit, I think you could say kind of on the lower end a little bit, but it's like, you know, that's just like normal America, basically. It's not anything crazy, but this is like Moscow. This is the nice like area suburb of Moscow right here. And this is the best they've got.
Let's go look at another place in Moscow. Let's go up here to this random spot, just picking them at random. Let's drop down here. So this is what it looks like.
That still looks not too bad, like around this area, I will admit.
But we have to think about this in perspective, folks. Moscow is the wealthiest region in the Russian Federation, and at its nicest, it just looks okay. Like, think about that. It just looks all right. It's not amazing. It's not unbelievably impressive. It's just okay. This is the nicest place in their country right here. If you went to the nicest places in America, some of them are truly unbelievable. I mean, just absolutely insane. That's something that you will not really find a lot in Russia. You'll be really hard-pressed to find it. But if we go to anywhere in America, let's just pick, you know what, let's pick somewhere in the Midwest. Lincoln, Nebraska. Why not? We'll drop down in an average neighborhood in Lincoln, Nebraska, right here. This is what the back alleys of Lincoln, Nebraska looks like. This is actually getting close to kind of looking like where we just came from, maybe around the area of Saransk in Russia. But this is a back street. Let's go out to the front street, and let's look at it there. So we come out here. This is what the actual street looks like.
I'll be honest with you. This right here is getting, like, in my opinion, this is the American version of the Russian, like, low-end place. This is what the American version looks like.
Yeah, but still, I mean, it's not incredibly bad. But once again, folks, this is getting on the lower end of what America would normally look like, unless we were picking an outlying extreme example of it being incredibly bad. And this is getting down to the point where it's looking like Russia's average place.
Oh, this is a nice street, though. I think it depends like where you're at on the street. This doesn't look like a bad street. There's some nice houses down this way, but the other street's looking a little bit rough. And also, look, they're actually fixing stuff. You won't ever see that happening like in rural Russia. They don't fix anything.
Hell no. I also saw someone say, go to LA. Yeah, I gotta say, people who talk about LA, I'm just gonna give it a bit of a hot take. People who talk about LA are some of the biggest whiners in America. Like, I'm not even kidding. We went to LA from being born and raised in Alabama for decades. This is the only place that we know. We were born and raised in Alabama our entire lives. We went to LA, and LA took a piss on anywhere in Alabama. Like, even the rougher sides were generally taking a piss, unless if it was like the Tenderloin or something like that. There was very rare places that we saw in LA where we're like, wow, this looks like hell. There were seldom few. There were actually way more nicer places in LA than anywhere we've ever seen in Alabama. And that's something that I also find that Americans get very dissociated on, is that you'll think that a place like LA is bad, when in reality, it's not really that bad. Sure, there might be some radical political elements in the city, but you'll find radical political elements everywhere of any type. So if you go out in the country, you'll find radical conservative elements. If you go into the city, you're going to find some radical liberal elements. It's just the fact of the political nature of the country at the moment, that there are radical elements of every type everywhere. But let me take you to LA, and let's see. Oh, that's unfortunate to see, but let's see, where in the world are we going to drop down? Matthew, where would we drop down?
What are you trying to see? Because LA's got a little bit of everything. They've got like the Gangville, they've got like high-end Beverly Hills, they've got Hollywood, they've got what are you trying to look for in LA?
Really anything, honestly. A good place, a mid place, and a bad place. We're trying to look for all three. Because I already know that Santa Monica is going to be our good place. I can just drop y'all down there and show you right now. Like any street, this is what Santa Monica looks like. Pretty nice, actually. Very nice, as a matter of fact. If you ever go there, highly recommend you go to Santa Monica. It's worth the look. But what else can we look at?
Go to Compton if you want to see I would say Compton. I think Compton's gotten a little gentrified though. But
like
take us to Compton though. Let's see how that's looking.
Let's see. Let's drop down in the random back streets in Compton to get the best look at it. So we'll drop down here. I mean, honestly, man, this is kind of like West Palm Beach.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. Some people's like perspectives differ a little bit, so people might think differently than me. But this here, even I know these property values are not cheap, by the way. Like anything in LA, I think even here in Compton is not cheap at all. So you have to have some money to even buy this. But this does not look great to me. Like this looks kind of a little bit. That's getting better down here, but it still doesn't look great.
But I'm not gonna lie, compared to what we saw in Russia, even Compton is a huge step up, like from your average city in Russia, like Saransk or Oktyabrsky. Like, this is nowhere even close to what those places looked like.
Yeah, it's not even close. I mean, just having paved streets and curbs, you're already at a whole different level just based on that.
So let me see. Let me try and rake my little chimp-like brain here to try and think of a bad place in LA. And I'm not picking the Tenderloin, folks, because I know that everyone wants the Tenderloin, or Skid Row as it's called. We're not going to go there because that's the famous one. I'm trying to think of somewhere that actually would be more niche but still be bad. So let me try and think. Where in the world would that be? Can y'all give me some recommendations, folks who live in LA? Can y'all give me some recommendations for specifically bad places that is not Skid Row or the Tenderloin? Well, that's actually
try Westlake.
Westlake. Where is Westlake?
You might have to type that in because I really can't point to it on the map.
Westlake, Los Angeles. This is right here. Right next to downtown, as a matter of fact. This might actually be a rougher place, I think. Let us drop down and let's take a look. And
that doesn't look that bad, actually. I'll take that back.
Shit. Damn it. I jumped out of it. Sorry, everyone. I don't mean to sway. It's just that was not the plan. I mean, this isn't, honestly, that's actually really nice right there. But this isn't really that bad.
That's right. Take it down to Figaro Street, if that's how you say it. Figaro Street? Figaro, I think. I think I'm mispronouncing it. But you know what street I'm talking about. It's the street with like the sort of like bad back business and stuff going on and all that stuff.
I think so. I just got to be able to find it.
Oh, you'll have to type that in, man, because we're not going to be able to find that without typing that in.
Figaro Street.
There it is. It's the second one.
Figueroa Street? I think that's how it's pronounced. So where is this? Okay, so this is actually down west of Compton, north of West Rancho Dominguez. So this is where this is. So let's take a little gander at it, and let's see what we got. So this, hopefully... Oh, dang, I don't know why it does that every time. So this is the actual area that we're looking for. So let's drop down. I'm not going to lie, dude. This actually just kind of looks like any average part of Birmingham, Alabama.
Well, I mean, Birmingham's not known for being nice. So I mean, it's downtown Birmingham's a rough place. So they've tried to like revamp part of it, but look at the street right there. You can see they're obviously holding like car meets and stuff in the middle of the street. There's like rubber all over the road. But this is known as like Prostitute Alley. Basically, this is where a lot of crime happens down this street. And there's particular parts of it that's a lot worse than others. I think you have to go down the street a bit to find it. But it's a rough area like through here.
Let's see here. I wouldn't doubt it. It's just that looks can be deceiving. But still, also, one thing, even with the looks being deceiving, this place looking like a high crime place, just have to ask you, does this look like anything we saw in Russia? No. It's still better looking. Like, that's the shocking thing about it. This is a crime-ridden street. Still looks better than most of Russia. So, once again, a little bit interesting with that. You can't see the burnouts, though. Is that guy actually doing a... Oh, no, he's just pulling out. I was about to be like, is that guy pulling a burnout right now?
He's not peeling out.
Yeah, I was like, no way. I was like, that's crazy. But, yeah, it doesn't look incredibly bad. I was about to say, is that gas station called Simp? I was about to be like, no freaking way they have a gas station called Simp. But beyond that, this is just generally what the area looks like. It's actually not that bad, honestly, especially not as bad as Russia. But once again, y'all are seeing the prevailing theme here, unless if it's Skid Row in LA, or if it's West Kensington in Philadelphia, or Detroit, or Gary, Indiana, or somewhere where the economy is literally collapsed for that area, that America generally looks pretty okay. Let's do it one more time with Russia. One more time. Let's go up to St. Petersburg, another fairly large city within the Russian Federation. This is the second largest one in Russia, if I'm correct. And we're going to drop down, and your average street within the Pokrovsk area of St. Petersburg. So let's take a little look.
Also, unfortunately, just a side note, we're making the Twitter news right now. Birmingham, Alabama is. Apparently, there's a humongous fire going on right now in Birmingham, Alabama, like a huge fire.
Oh, yeah?
Right now. Yeah, it looks like it's coming from downtown, actually, apparently right this second, which is where Enforcer HQ is, by the way. So just some huge, like, it's a massive fire. I'm not sure what the hell's on fire, but I'll have to find out.
Dang, man, that's actually crazy. Also, by the way, folks, this is anywhere St. Petersburg. This is actually considered to be a pretty all right part of St. Petersburg as well. I tried to find a place that might be considered okay, and still, it ain't looking that great.
Yeah, it's not looking too good. I'll be honest with you. I don't like that commie block look.
Yeah, the commie block style kind of went out of fashion with the collapse of the Soviet Union, but here in Russia, it's still a big thing. Or better yet, you know what? Let me bring y'all out to the neighborhoods. Why not? Ah, yes, the neighborhoods. This one actually has a paved road, and the paved road makes a big difference. It actually does. But still, this is an average suburb in Russia. Or actually, this is an affluent suburb compared to what we've seen elsewhere. And still, it generally looks a step below an American suburb or any average place in America. It's a little bit crazy when you think of that. But once again, the whole proving point of the statements, or largely just the random examples that we've been trying to grab without going through and cherry picking everything, is that anywhere USA looks better than anywhere Russia. So the idea that people like Tucker Carlson try and push forward, that the authoritarian dictators in Russia are doing better than our democratically elected leaders here in America, is nothing but a farce and a lie, and is a fabrication to try and lead the American public astray, away from the American-founded and traditional precedents that have been laid out in our government, that have done us incredibly well and has led us to an unparalleled level of prosperity compared to any country that is run like the Russians. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And a huge thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. Glock like who's there. I hope that does address that quite well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, because I see some people curious about what's going on in Birmingham, where Enforcer HQ is, the fire is somewhere downtown, I believe. It's a commercial fire, and it looks like it's a large one, but it looks like it's under control. I think they got the fire department out there, but it's huge though. Like, I got a video I put under our likes tab if you want to take a peek at it. Like, don't replay the whole video if you want to take a look at it. Just like show a picture of it, and you can see what I'm talking about.
Let's see here. Why is there a concert going on? Oh, shoot, man. That's actually near the Topgolf.
Yeah, I couldn't tell. It looked like maybe it was near the airport, perhaps, sort of over that direction, sort of in the industrial park.
So let's see here. We actually might be able to geolocate this pretty easy. So This is the intersection. There's the Topgolf. They're at an arena, and it's somewhere over here, somewhere. Because wait, hang on. It might actually be. Oh, good God! If it's in there, dude, they're getting shot. But let's see here. Hold up, there's a parking deck. I'll show you all the video because like this is actually happening in Birmingham right now. But there's the Topgolf right over there, what you can see. So I'm trying to figure out where this concert venue is because it has a parking deck near to it, and the fire is right over there. So we can figure out where the parking deck is because we already know where the Topgolf is at. We could actually figure out.
So it's 12th Avenue North and 28th Street North is where it is.
12th
Avenue
at the
intersection
and 28th. So it's right around here. Huh. So it's in one of the
fire station right there. So they didn't have too far to go.
I think this might have been arson, man, because this building has been abandoned, and I'm assuming that that's probably what's on fire, or it could be these apartments that are on fire. But it has to be one of
this
these.
is a tough area. This is
yeah.
a tough area over here. Like this is like dangerous area. Like downtown Birmingham, this is tough. Driving up over this way, pretty dangerous. If nobody knows, Birmingham, Alabama, where you're looking at right here, which is the downtown where we currently live, is like one of the murder capitals of the country. Like it's one of the top most dangerous places in the country, and most people don't know that. They think of Memphis or some other larger city like that. But Birmingham, dangerous as hell. You go into the wrong place in Birmingham, you can find yourself in some deep trouble, depending on where you're going. Very dangerous.
Currently, the city of Birmingham is the third most dangerous city in America. The first most dangerous city in America is 8 miles away in Bessemer, Alabama, right here. This is actually the murder capital of the United States right now. So you have the third most dangerous city in America, just 8 miles away from the most dangerous city in America currently. So Birmingham is a pretty dangerous place. I actually would say that some areas of Birmingham actually do look like Saransk and Oktyabrsky in Russia. Like some of them actually do. Like for example, the best example I could give of that would be North Birmingham up here. This place truly does look like Russia. Like, let me show y'all. Actually, this even doesn't look like Russia on this street. Like, that's actually shocking. There are some very rough spots up here. Let me see if I can find one. Here we are. This is getting there. You know what's shocking, Matthew, is that this place is actually pretty bad off for Birmingham perspectives, but it's still not as bad off as your average Russian city.
Yeah, it's not. But I'll be honest with you. Like when you're driving through, like because we've actually driven through these places before and seen the really bad parts of Birmingham. Like we've driven through there, I believe, on purpose one time to go do something that having to do with some like industrial place out there for like some home fixes and stuff. And also one time accidentally drove through the north side of Birmingham because we didn't know any better at the time. But it feels a lot worse when you're actually like driving through it like in your vehicle than like looking at it from street view here. Like give us a view of this right here. This like driving all the way from like the train yard over at I think it's called Norris Train Yard or something, all the way to downtown Birmingham. You're driving through places that look like you're not even in America anymore. It looks like you're in like a third world country. It looks that bad. It's tough. Like poverty like you've never seen before type deal, and it feels dangerous as hell. Like you see people sort of wandering streets that seem like they're up to something suspicious. Like the way they're walking, they seem to have like weapons on them and stuff. You're like, uh-oh, I think I'm driving through an area that might have some gang activity or violence or something going on, because it seems to have that air about it. And the stats back it up. Like a lot of murders, a lot of violence and bad things like that.
Yeah, it's pretty bad in Birmingham. Generally, everyone in the city knows this rule. Avoid Birmingham and Bessemer and everything in between, because Fairfield and Inslee are also incredibly dangerous areas as well. And stay over the mountain. There's a mountain range right here that's about 900 or so feet tall, and it pretty much divides hell from the rest of the city that's somewhat tolerable. So that's kind of how it works here in Birmingham. But Birmingham actually is very rough. The city itself is incredibly rough. So just a little bit of an interesting tidbit or a little bit of information to share with y'all about where the Enforcer HQ currently is. It's an interesting place. But with that, I hope
also someone says that gangs. Yes, it's gangs. Like there's actual there's actual gang like violence going on in Birmingham. Like that there's like gangs that will be on the street. Like some people think we're just saying it's just a sketchy person. Like no, it's not a sketchy person. Like there's actual gangs out there on the street that are confirmed. And the police know about these gangs, and there's not much you can really do about it because they're very prevalent. So you just kind of like know where not to go, basically. So kind of like any like major city as well. LA's got that problem. They've got a gang problem. Birmingham definitely has a gang problem for certain. It's just the way it is.
And I mean, you'll see them out there like wearing their colors and everything. You know, you'll see different colors, like, you know, like some sort of like a clear sort of a color. You'll be like, oh yeah, that person is like a part of a gang. Like they'll be wearing like red or green or blue or any other given color, and there'll be like decent amounts of clothing pieces. Like they're not incredibly obvious. It's not like they're wearing like they're all like greened out or redded out or anything like that. But it'll be like, you know, a red shoes and a red hat, or, you know, any other color sequence of something like that, and you'll be like, oh yeah, that person is definitely in a gang. There's no doubt about it, because that's, you know, that's what gangs do. But anyways, with that, we do have to get on to a lot more questions, but a little bit of a walkthrough of Birmingham, since there's a major fire going on here right now, and it actually is in the middle of the hood. So with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to Hokey Redneck. Goodness, excuse me, getting choked up there about the gangs. But Hokey Redneck put in a $50 donation. Thank you very much, Hokey, for being a longtime channel legend and supporting the channel as well. He said, "Is Russia better or worse than Appalachia?"
Ooh, that's a tough one, actually, because Appalachia can get a little rough. Let me drop you down near Trust, the town. Well, actually, it doesn't even really exist anymore, but let's just drop down here. Now, let's take a gander. Actually, I'd say that this is far better than Russia. Like, this is actually a place we've been. Let me go up here to where there's actually some houses and stuff. Yeah, this is far better than Russia, in my opinion. Actually, this is really pretty. I don't remember it looking like this. It's really nice up here. But I would say Russia is worse off than the Appalachians, or the Appalachians, whichever way you want to call it. So with that, I hope that does address that well, Hokey Redneck. I hope that does address it the best it can. Big thanks to you once again for being an old guard and a massive supporter of the channel. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and the next one here goes to Wubba, also another longtime channel legend, and thank you, Wubba, as well, for that $25 support. And they said, keeping the coffee flowing.
Hey, and thank you for the support and helping the coffee to keep flowing. We enjoy it greatly, and we have to have our coffee to keep this thing rolling. So a big thanks to you once again. A massive thanks for the support, and we're on to the next question.
And we have a 20 from Just a Plumber, who said, LSA and carry on.
Hey, and long live the Lee Spring Army, and we will make sure to carry on, and we're going to carry on right into another question. But a huge thanks once again.
All right, and our next one goes to Marco Genie, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Marco. He said, can Putin even afford to make a move on NATO? And taking into account how bad it's going for him in Ukraine, as well as the non-existent involvement from their part in the Iran conflict, doesn't that signal that it'd be unlikely? Well, here's the thing, Marco, at least in my opinion, and then the enforcer will tell his opinion on it. All Putin has to do to kick something off with the Baltics and to simply create a major problem if he wanted to attack it is to literally lob a few missiles over there. That's all he has to do. And then they've got the Baltics tied up in a war. That's it. Russia doesn't necessarily have to go in and like immediately take the Baltics. All they have to do is tie them up in a conflict, either with missiles, ground troops, whatever, and then they can start the war. It may take them a while to try to win it, but it would obviously cause a problem where they would either have to start defending their country, NATO would either have to invoke Article 5 and get involved, or something. And at that point, you've got a bad situation because then Russia's allies might jump in and it's just going to turn into a mess. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that in my opinion, I generally believe that it's a much different situation than what we were seeing currently in Ukraine or in Iran. Russia doesn't have the ability to power project outside of anything directly connected to its borders. That's why the war in Ukraine is able to happen. And that's why a greater war with NATO can happen, is because both of those are bordering Russia physically. Helping out Iran in any way is pretty much impossible because Russia does not have an actual land corridor with Iran. Azerbaijan is largely in the way of that. So they really can't support the Iranians like they would begin a conflict, say, in Europe. But the thing with starting a conflict in Europe is that they don't have to win. All they have to do is start a situation where they can threaten the use of nuclear weapons, and then they can pretty much win that way. That's really kind of the reality of what they would be working towards, is using the nuclear weapon as their ultimate fallback. So they don't even have to go into the war with the concept that they can win. They just have to go into the concept of a war of pushing in a little bit, gaining some ground, getting the whole of NATO involved, and then directly threatening nuclear weapons practically immediately, and then possibly using a few in a tactical setting on the battlefield. So that's generally what we would believe they would be working towards. But I would actually say that it is quite likely. Russia has made clear ambitions of their expansion into Eastern Europe, and considering that we're now hearing that the Russians appear to be gearing up, and every single European leader and also the President of the United States is saying that, it appears to be very evident and highly likely that that is the case. And so a big thanks to you once again, and we're on to the next one.
And our next super chat here is going to go to Rodney Thor, who puts in a 20. And he said, Russia will have the means to carry the war into Europe if it seizes Ukraine with its vast resources and conscripts the men.
That's possible. That also could be a pretty big thing. Or they could start the war in Europe with NATO, even while the war in Ukraine is going on. Because once again, at least working under my theory, they don't even have to they don't even have to think of winning. They just have to think about getting into the conflict in the first place to threaten nuclear weaponry. So I hope that does address it the best I can. A big thanks to you once again for the support, and we're on to the next one.
And we have a $20 support from Boulder Boy, as well as Catherine of Idaho. And thank you very much to both of you, Boulder Boy and Catherine of Idaho, for that $20 support. And we also have a 20 from Marion Deemer, who said, you're amazing. Y'all are amazing.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, Marion Deemer, and saying that we're amazing. You're amazing for being around forever. And I also got to give a huge thanks to Catherine of Idaho and Boulder Boy for y'all's support and helping this channel to keep on running. So a big thanks to all three of y'all once again. And we're on to the next one.
And we have a 20 from Paul Weekly. And Paul said, starting to see flights cutting through Iranian airspace again. And thanks for the coverage.
And thank you for the support, Paul Weekly. And we are more than happy to cover the news because we know that a lot of people count on this channel to be the consistent coverage of news that they get every single day. And we hope we were able to make that happen once again on this very day. And so a huge thanks once again. And we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Crisco, who puts in a 20. He said, is Jenna related to Tess Tickle? And yes, I know what that means. Before anybody says it, they got head. I know what that means.
And I thank you for support, Crisco. And yes, Jenna Tolles is related to Tess Tickles. That is actually true. And I got to thank you so much for the support. I got to thank you for having us. But we always see those before they're coming. We just read them off anyways because, one, I don't really care. And two, they are pretty funny, just as like the idea of getting that, reading that aloud. So with that, a big thanks to you once again for the support. I hope that does address that the best we can, Crisco. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to Glenn Sykes, who put in a 20. And thank you very much, Glenn. He said, I just started listening to y'all about a month ago, and thanks for all the up-to-date news. I love the format.
I thank you for enjoying our format, Glenn. We try our best to make sure that our format is well put together and well researched. We don't really like the idea of getting on air and just kind of like rambling through it or not really having any good analysis. We take a lot of time off air to try and read up about what we're speaking on and learn as much as we can so that when we get on air on the fly, we can come up with really good analysis. Something that no one else is really able to do. I haven't seen anyone else do that, at least on the internet yet. And I also have certainly not seen that on the mainstream. Everyone's analysis on the mainstream absolutely is tough. I mean, it's really tough. Like their analysis goes down to like the moralistic feeling perspective. Like CNN will do that usual sort of like a 5-minute snippet on Ukraine. They'll be like, the wall rages on, a cat runs through the street, the sound of artillery in the distance, time is running out for Ukraine's defenders. And it's like, this isn't even an analysis of the war. This isn't even telling anyone what's going on. It's literally like, that's almost like an opening of a book about a war. You know, that's really like what their analysis comes down to. They don't say anything rather than the war is going on, people are dying, boo-hoo-hoo, really sad. They don't tell you why the war is being fought. They don't tell you where the war is being fought on the ground. They don't tell you why these countries are doing what they're doing. They don't tell you any of that. The analysis is absolutely abysmal. And I got to thank you so much for enjoying our analysis and our news coverage, because we love to know that we were actually really one of the only channels out there that actually goes into all of that in depth every single night and also lays out what's actually going on the ground in most places. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right. And our next one here is going to go to Espen Tjørns Holgen. And hopefully I said your last name properly. That's a foreign last name right there. And sadly, I can't pronounce it very good. But thank you very much, Espen, for that $20 support. He did not leave a comment, but we do appreciate that very much. And also another shout out to Catherine of Idaho, who threw in another $20 support as well. And thank you very much, Catherine, once again. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank you massively, both Espen and Catherine of Idaho, Catherine of Idaho for your additional $20 super chat, and also Espen for his $20 super chat without a comment. We thank y'all both greatly because y'all are helping the channel to keep the gears turning so that way we can keep the news burning. So big thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are going to be moving on to the next one.
And our next one goes to AC130, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, good sir, for that support. He said, kind of off topic, but I wanted to show support and ask if y'all think it's crazy for the WWE to still be going to Saudi this weekend in the middle of all this. And I'm a rapper from the Carolinas, and thank y'all for your coverage.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, rapper from the Carolinas. And I got to thank you greatly for helping this channel to keep rolling. And I got to say, it is kind of weird that the WWE is going to Saudi Arabia. Like, I actually, like, just being honest here, I don't even know who the audience is for the WWE in Saudi Arabia. Like, I'm just being completely upfront because the WWE seems to be a very American sort of a thing. And I know that a lot of American culture does get exported in forms of entertainment. But the last people I would think that would want to watch the WWE would be the Saudi Arabians. I feel like that would be more translatable to, say, a European market or maybe even the South Korean or Japanese markets, and especially the Australian and New Zealand markets, because the English-speaking world can really get behind the WWE, at least in my opinion. And the European market could as well, and Japan and South Korea would find it an interesting American cultural novelty. But the Middle East, I just don't really understand. Like, it's like, what, like, I don't really know how that actually jives with their culture. Because I believe that their entertainment is a lot more different than ours, at least in the few times I've ever been exposed to what they call entertainment in the Middle East. It's very different than what we would call entertainment. So it's interesting to know that they are going to Saudi Arabia. But beyond that, I would say it's not really that unprecedented. There's a lot of money and a lot of planning that went in by the WWE into the Middle East, or largely their shows or performances that they conduct, especially globally, because they have to take a lot of their production crews, the wrestlers, and everyone else that's involved overseas, and that costs a lot of money, and that takes a lot of pre-planning. So considering that they did all of that, there's really no way for them to back out without taking a significant financial loss. And of course, the company is going to put the shareholders' interests over the interest of their employees or their safety and well-being. So no matter what, they were going to be going over there unless if there was an active shooting war. So I'm not too surprised, just for the fact of how companies usually work. But with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. A big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I also see some people saying some stuff like, interestingly enough, the WWE is big into well, apparently Saudis are actually big into the WWE, to put it the right way around. I actually didn't know that. I actually didn't know that at least recently, a lot of American comedians have been going over to Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and so on, and pretty much doing tours around the Middle East. And Matthew and me also spoke about this at length, that a lot of Middle Eastern countries, especially the Saudis, are pretty much just buying out entire entertainment or sports categories here in America outright and taking these American people and then just bringing them into the Middle East. So it's a little bit interesting.
They tried to buy us out, not Saudi Arabia, but we won't name the company, but a company from the UAE actually tried to hire us to be a spokesperson for a defense contractor there. But we turned it down and said, no, we're not interested in that. We'll have to pass. But it's interesting, though. It seems like they're trying to get Americans that have either an audience or something like that. They're trying to get them to go over there to go do something. If it's sports, if it's speaking for a company or whatever the case is, that's what they're trying to do. And, you know, obviously I'm like, I'm not going to speak for no, like, foreign, like, defense contractor. That's not going to be for us. But, you know, it's just kind of interesting. It's like, why would they want, like, American YouTubers to represent their company over there? It's like, man, first of all, I would never do that, me personally, but it's like, you know, it's interesting they even made the offer.
There was a couple of things that stopped us from doing that. One, I never want to be listed as a foreign agent, because if we did that, we would have to be listed as a foreign agent. Two, their booth was literally right across from the Kalashnikov concerns booth,
Yeah.
literally across
Right
the
across
aisle.
from the Russians.
So the FSB was guaranteed going to be staring at us the whole time we were there. So I was like, hell no. I was like, there is absolutely, like base systems and Raytheon were like 12 booths down, and these are massive booths that were going to be at this arms expo, like massive ones. And I was like, I don't want to be that far away from American help, 12 booths away. It's like the FSB could come over and start strangling me by the neck, like 3 guys at once, just ganging up on me and beating the hell out of me and Matthew. And I was like, hell no. I was like, I don't want to be dealing with that. It's like, I was like, I'm good. So
I remember I pulled up the map of the expo. I pulled up a map of it, and I was like, let's see. So there's the company right there. There's where their booth is. Oh, and look, literally the Russians were like right across the way from that company. You had Kalashnikov, you had like a couple of other Russian companies, and the Russian defense people were going to be there too, like literally right in front of the area. I was like, hell no. I'm like, hell no. Because the Russians are going to like possibly see us. They might recognize us or something. I don't know how well known we are to the Russians. That's kind of always been a little iffy.
Well, remember, we were already on the hit list.
Yeah, they're aware of us. Like, we know that for a fact, but I don't know just how aware the Russians are of us, like at what governmental level they are, because obviously we've been bad-mouthing the Russians for a long time. Like, hell no, we're not going like in a foreign country to like be right across from the Russians. Absolutely not.
Yeah, I mean, it was just crazy. Honestly, it was insane. Like the offer was very kind. I mean, it was actually quite a large company that was extending us the offer. I'm not going to say their name, but I think they were evaluated at like a $5 billion evaluation. They were a significant arms dealer based out of the United Arab Emirates, but we didn't want to take them up on the offer. One, I didn't want to be a foreign agent because I'm an American. I would rather support America's interest than a foreign country's arms dealing interests. So if, like, for example, if Base Systems reached out to us, well, actually that's British. If Northrop Grumman or Lockheed Martin reached out to us, or Boeing for that matter, and wanted us to go to an arms expo and try and sell their products, or at least represent their company, I'd actually be fine with that because it's an American arms company and it's generally benefiting the United States and representing America's interests. However, it's a foreign arms company. I would never do that because that's a foreign country. I'm an American. I'm looking out for American interests first and foremost, and there's no amount of money that you could give us that would actually make me go, yeah, you know what? I'll be listed as a foreign agent, pretty much helping and supporting the interests of a country that isn't even my own, that I'm not even from. That just wouldn't be the kind of thing that I do. I find that to be un-American, in my opinion. So, and also the big thing is that literally, no joke, the Kalashnikov group was literally right across the aisle in front of their booth, and that was like the ultimate nail in the coffin. Like we were already going to say no, but that was the ultimate nail in the coffin, was that Kalashnikov was literally right across from us, and I was like, I don't want to be staring down the Russians, knowing that this company might not have our back if they like were like, hey, those are the enforcer bastards, get them, like, it's like, if like, would this company have our back in that fist fight that would happen in the middle of that aisle? Will we just get ganked? Like, I don't know. And I was like, I don't really want to take that shot in the middle of the UAE, you know what I mean?
Man, I was about to jump on that equipment they had and like give them a live demo or something. What's that tank back here we got on display? Let me see that tank real quick.
Yeah, and also what's interesting, folks, is that it actually was like it was actually a pretty big honor, the offer that they gave us. It's the biggest arms expo that ever happens in the world in Abu Dhabi. That's actually the one that they were asking us to go to. Everyone goes to it. So literally everyone in the world. So Narenko from China, the Israeli weapons, what was it, Matthew? The Israeli weapons something, the IW something, the IWD, something like that was going to be there. Base Systems, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, the Texas Instruments, like you name it. If anyone was producing a weapon, they were going to be at this arms expo. I think I can actually show y'all the expo hall. Like, do we remember where it was, Matthew? Like where it was going to be?
Sadly, I don't really remember. It was in the UAE though, but I don't remember exactly where the conference hall was.
It was in Abu Dhabi. It was in Abu Dhabi somewhere. I wish I could find this thing. Damn, it was big too. It was a massive facility. Is it one of these? No, it's not one of these. I think it's further down here. I really want to find this to be able to show. I think this is it. Let's see here. It might be. Let me just go pull up the Abu Dhabi Weapons Expo. The Abu Dhabi Weapons Expo. So let's see here. So I'll just show y'all some pictures from this Weapons Expo. So here was what it actually was going to be set up as. Like, this is what we were asked to go show up to. And of course, they're selling everything here. Literally anything and everything. So you could even go see a T90M, like an actual T90M. They were going to have that there as well. But it's of course the T90Ms that are made for export. So it's the ones that India gets, which is like the T90S or something like that. But we were going to be asked to be here helping out a company to sell their arms. There was going to be Rheinmetall. There's a Rheinmetall vehicle actually right there. It's like, it's actually kind of crazy to think we were even offered a position to represent an entire multi-billion-dollar company at the largest arms expo on the planet, which is in Abu Dhabi. But if it's not American, I'm not going. So if an American arms company wanted to reach out to us and were like, hey, would you like to market our stuff in Abu Dhabi? I'd be like, absolutely. Because I know that they're also going to have American security present, and I'm also an American representing the Americans, so that would make sense. And
also, I see some people, like, we're not going to say the name of the group, by the way. I see some people wanting to know which one it was. I will say this though, another fellow war YouTuber actually apparently did take them up on their offer and actually went there and represented them one year at one of these companies. I'm not going to name the channel either, but One of the other YouTubers had done that before. Us personally, though, I'll speak for myself. The enforcer can speak for himself. I personally will not ever represent a foreign military company ever. Like even if they gave me an offer, I wouldn't do that. And even honestly, I wouldn't represent any foreign interest unless it's an American interest here in America. I'm not representing it. That's as simple as it gets.
I
for
absolutely
me.
agree.
If Anduril, like for example, I will say out of all the defense companies in America, I'm the biggest fan of Anduril. If Anduril ever said to us, like, we would like you to speak or like do something at an event, I can't say yes to it. Obviously, me and the enforcement have to talk about that, but that would be one that I would strongly consider, like, to do that. Because Anduril is a very, very interesting company, very cool. The founder is pretty cool as well. Just an interesting company overall. They're more of like a tech company / defense company. That's why they're unique. But that's an American company, though. That's not a foreign company.
Also, another thing, I see some people saying they probably scan everyone going through the door. It was probably going to be really safe. Just to explain, like, some of the security concerns that could have popped up in a situation like that, this company was also going to provide our board, so our hotel room, for while we were there. And that means that that hotel room is at a preset location. We aren't picking it. That company knows where it is. And let's say for some reason that company tells that information to someone where we are, let's say they do. Or let's say some Russian guy in the FSB who was at the Kalashnikov booth goes and follows us and we don't notice the guy and we go to a hotel. Well, now the Russians know where we are out of the expo every day, and then they could just show up there. A lot of people end up getting killed in hotels whenever they get killed. They don't get killed at an expo on the floor. They follow them out to figure out where they're hiding or where they're hanging out, and then you end up disappearing, and someone might not be able to find you again, or you end up dead in your hotel room, in the shower or the bedroom or something. So that was also the other thing. We were like, if we can't control, like we didn't tell this to the company because we weren't even negotiating on this. This was just something where we're like, no. We were like, if we can't even pick our own location of where we're going to be, and they just provide us the money for the board, then we wouldn't even do it anyways. Like even if we wanted to represent a foreign arms company, which I sure as hell wouldn't have, we don't even have pick or a say on where we're staying to where they don't know. They would know. The Russians might end up knowing. I was like, this could just end up being a total disaster. We could end up waking up dead one morning, and I really don't want that to happen. So we avoided it. Very nice offer by them, by the way. I got to say, we were really honored by the offer, but we never took them up on that, and I'm pretty happy that we did. And if an American company wants to step forward and ask us to do that, I'm more than happy to wave the American flag and toot the horn of American weapons overseas, but I would not do that for a foreign country. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so jumping into our next super chat, this one goes to Hokey Redneck yet again, and he puts in a 20. He said, we all feel bad for the fallen on both sides. And honestly, I do personally, Hokey Redneck. I'm not one of these people that's like, oh, those Russian conscripts, they get what's coming to them. I personally don't think that. I know there's some people out there that would disagree with that. But the conscripts especially, they have no choice in it. They're getting drafted in, and they're as much of a victim as Putin as the Ukrainians are, in my opinion, because they're getting thrown into something they don't even want to fight in, and they're clearly going to get killed in the war. Like, they're not going to survive. They're put out there with very little training, very little equipment, and they're victims too, in my opinion. But at the same time, though, war is nasty. And of course, the Ukrainians have to do what they got to do, because the conscripts, even though they're there involuntarily, they're invading a foreign country, which is not theirs. And at the end of the day, it's war, and sometimes life isn't fair. So it just kind of is what it is, but it is unfortunate. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to agree, Hokey Redneck. I do feel bad for all of them, but at the same time, as far as we go here on the channel, it is a war, and we are rooting for our side, which in the end has to be the right side because we're rooting for them. So we keep spirits high on the channel as far as our war coverage goes, and talking about the Western side hopefully coming out on top, or at least keeping up some good spirits about that. But at the same time, I do have a modicum of respect for the Russians that are getting killed in the conflict, because a lot of them shouldn't be there in the first place, and it's always unfortunate to see deaths like that happening, even for our enemies. It's unfortunate to see, although necessary at times, like in the war in Ukraine. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. A big thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep running, and we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Brian M., who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Brian, for that support. He said, you break down between Birmingham and Mobile, your worst nightmares manifest. Don't ever deviate from a major highway in Alabama. You'll be on a sequel. And don't trust Google Maps. I've been everywhere in Alabama. I've been Mobile, Montgomery, Tuscaloosa, Birmingham, Huntsville, Selma. I've literally been everywhere during the entire course of living here my entire life. And there are definitely scary parts of Alabama. I'll be honest with you, though, I'm kind of desensitized to some of those sketchy areas because I've sort of we didn't grow up in like a terrible area, but it wasn't a great area either. It was, I'm not going to say, like, I think we said before on here, but I'm not going to say it again, but it's outside of Montgomery, Alabama, just generally speaking. And there are definitely sketchy places here. If you're not from Alabama and you're coming here to visit, or you're like driving down the interstate and you pull off the interstate and go off of it a little bit, some people I've heard are very shocked about how it looks, but to me, it's just, where I grew up, basically. But I know that some places are bad, though. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say, yeah, it's the state of Alabama is an interesting one, and generally, a decent amount of the I don't want to say this is all people. I want to make this really clear. There are a few very nice people in Alabama, but in my general experience, a lot of people in Alabama are really mean and jaded. I don't know what it is about it. It's just an endless string of things with that. There are great people though here in the state. I want to make that incredibly clear because some of those folks are watching, and to them, they are some of our greatest friends that we have. But to the others, it's interesting. I don't know what it is with the state, but it breeds angry people generally across the board. Like, we almost got shot about a week ago in the road rage incident over something we couldn't even do. Like, we couldn't, we got into a traffic jam pretty much, like, with everyone else. And so this guy behind us tried to whip out a gun and shoot us nearly because we couldn't move forward because there was a car in front of us. And that car also couldn't go anywhere. It's just a state like that. It's crazy, honestly. But yeah, you could even end up on a sequel on a highway, because that's where that ended up happening, was literally right to the on-ramp of an interstate. So I thank you for the support and help this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that well, at least from what we've personally experienced here in Alabama. But yeah, and also I see someone say, one reason I don't live in Alabama, gotten one too many tussles. Yeah, it's crazy. People around here are just like souped up, ultra violent people. And they're also just mean. Like a lot of people are just mean. Like, just the meanest people. Like you can try and be as nice to them as you can, and they'll end up trying to kick your teeth in. Now that's not to say that all of them are like that. There are some very nice people here. And I'm not going to dox any of them, but they know who I'm talking about. Like, those people who I know that are watching the channel. There are really nice people here in the state, and they do exist. But every time I run up on someone, they could seem nice at the onset, and then they're incredibly mean afterwards, or they're just mean from the outset. I'm just like, I don't know what's up with that, because I always try and be as nice to everyone as I can, and then some people just never reciprocate that, or they take that and then they view that as weakness, and they try and just crap on you for it. I don't know what it is, but this state is an interesting one for sure. But a big thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that well, and with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Fantasy Star, who puts in a $10 donation, and thank you very much, Fantasy Star, for that support. They said, "Ouya Navy," and the U.S. Naval Midshipman of Maine Maritime appreciates everything this channel does.
Hey, and we thank the U.S. Midshipman of the Maine Maritime Academy, and I thank you so much for appreciating everything we do and supporting the channel and helping us to keep this thing rolling, because we got all kinds of amazing folks who watch this channel, and y'all are one of the folks who are going to keep our proud maritime forces going well into the future. So a massive thanks to you once again, and we're on to the next one.
Also, by the way, someone here said, "Oh my God, that was you guys." It's like, I would assume that's not actually the real person right there. I would think they're joking. But anyways, jumping into our next one here. This one goes to Jenna, last name Tolls, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Jenna, for that support. He said, "If I was Prez, I'd focus my regime change on Russia."
If I was the president, I'd focus it on on both of these, the Russians and the Iranians, at the same time. The Chinese would have to wait. I think the Chinese, we've got to let them simmer for a couple of years. We'll get to them, though, eventually. But the Russians and the Iranians are both incredibly important to me right now. So I'd focus my efforts and attention on both of them, if it was possible. And so with that, I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, someone said, let's see here. Someone said, "Wow, you must live in a bad part. It's not that way here in Mountain Brook." That's because Mountain Brook is like the one place in Alabama. It's like the Beverly Hills of Alabama in Mountain Brook. Like, it's literally like $1 million homes there. Like, Mountain Brook is a very little bubble. I will admit, Mountain Brook is nice. Like, it's very, very nice in Mountain Brook. Nice houses, nice little community and stuff like that. But also very, very closed off, in my opinion, and also extremely expensive. So it's not like, just your average Joe gets a house there or something like that. You've got to be like a millionaire to go buy a house in Mountain Brook. So Yeah, a multimillionaire. And also, usually the homes there need a lot of repairs on them. So you're dumping a ton of money into fixing the homes there. And you're already paying $1 million to buy it in the first place. So it's a bit crazy.
But I have my own personal experiences with Mountain Brook. Mountain Brook is very nice to look at. It's a very nice place. But the people there act like if you aren't a Mountain Brooker, that you're trash. Because back in the day, I'll explain this to all of y'all. Back in the day, before the YouTube channel started, me and Matthew actually held normal jobs, and we worked those. And one of my normal jobs actually was very close to Mountain Brook. And so, considering that there was no fast food there, you just, you have to go find a restaurant somewhere to go eat at, like a sandwich shop or something. So I went to one of them. I'm not going to say which one because I don't want to put them on blast to, like 13,000 people live. But I went to one of them and I walked in, not in my work uniform or anything, changed out of it because it was like a 1 hour break or something like that. Walked into it and literally everyone was laughing and stuff, ah, ha, ha, like when I was walking in. And as soon as I past the threshold of the door, they all stopped laughing and they just started staring at me. It's like an open store, like for business, like it's a sandwich shop. So I walked in, I was like, yeah, can I get the sandwich? Sure. And everyone just started acting like they were the most confrontational people possible because it looked like I wasn't necessarily from Mountain Brook. And I was like, what the hell's up with this? I was like, why in the world is everyone acting like this? Literally the weirdest thing. It was like walking into a Wild West saloon with how they were acting. They were like,
what kind of sandwich did they give you? Knuckle?
Yeah, they gave me a knuckle sandwich with pimento cheese. And it was really expensive. The sandwiches there were really expensive. It wasn't even a great sandwich. It was just okay. And then they served it with that much sass and attitude. And I was like, what the hell's up with this? I was like, I just want a sandwich. There's nowhere else to eat around this damn place because they don't allow fast food restaurants to be here. So I then left and I just felt so awkward about that. I just never went and ate anywhere at that point anymore. I would just buy something in the grocery store I worked at and pretty much get ripped off because the prices were insanely high. But that was just, I was like, what the hell's up with this? Anything I've ever done around Mountain Brook, except for this one thing. There's actually a really cool Cajun restaurant there. They were actually really cool in that restaurant. But every other time I've ever had a dealing in Mountain Brook, they've always been a little they always act like I'm like an Auslander. It's like, what's up with this? It's like, do I just seem like that? I don't know. And I dress up fine. I dress up semi-casual. Well, formal casual.
No, it's known for that.
What?
Mountain Brook is known for that. And Mountain Brook is known for being old money. It's known for being very closed off. And if you're not from there and you're not a part of the community, then it's generally you're ostracized. That's generally what I've heard from a lot of people. It's not just unique to one person, you or me or whoever. It's generally like that. And I know some people might disagree with that. I've known people around the area that disagree with that. But there's a lot of people that agree with me though at the same time. That's just my experience with it. It's very materialistic, in my opinion, very money driven and very status driven. It's not like, people are friends with one another mainly because they like each other. It's more about you're on their socioeconomic level. The status is the same thing and you're friends for that reason. Sort of like friends of convenience and status instead of genuine friendships. At least in my opinion, that's the way it is. But Mountain Brook's not the only place like that. There's a lot of places. I kind of got that sense off of parts of Los Angeles a little bit. It was sort of like that in some places. It just depends, basically, where you're at.
And also, by the way, I do have to clarify, there are a couple of nice people that I actually know who live in Mountain Brook, and they're really cool. They're great people. Maybe even watching the show right now. And I want them to know that they're definitely not the folks I'm talking about. But the general rank and file Mountain Brook people that I just run into in passing strangers, they treat you like you're some sort of an outsider. It's just weird. It's weird how they do that. But also I see Hokey Redneck asked, do you kids even own a polo? Only polos. Whenever I go out, I'm always wearing a polo. So yeah, by that definition, you would think I'd generally blend in because that's generally what Mountain Brook people wear. But then it's I don't know, maybe I just give off that old country barbecue training video kind of, you like hot fudge sundaes kind of a thing when I walk into their places. And that's not the Mountain Brook attitude. So maybe that's what throws it off. I don't know. But anyways, with that, I hope that addresses that the best I can, at least in my personal experience. But that's not to say that there's a really bad place. Homewood's actually a pretty cool place in Birmingham. Homewood's pretty nice. And let's see what else. Oh, actually, Homewood's one of the nice places. Yeah, so there's nice places in Birmingham where you just find the middle ground, it's just right kind of a thing. But they're kind of few and far in between. It's either extremely bad to the point like you're getting shot in the hood, or it's really like high end to the point that they act like if they don't see you and you're not like a member of the local country club, then they treat you like you might be some sort of like a undesirable or something. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
Man, I could rabbit hole in this one for a long time. I see one guy who is apparently from Mountain Brook in here. He said, "It must be you guys is the reason why you're not late." I mean, look, I mean, it comes down to individual preference. I mean, if you like Mountain Brook and you like that status driven like environment, I'm not judging you for it. I mean, it's a free country, live where you want. But I also see some people in here that are literally from our area that are saying the exact same thing I'm saying. That are saying it's a lot of fake people. I know nice people that live in that area, by the way. Like, I know a handful of people that are extremely nice, some of the nicest people I've ever met. But as a whole, though, in my opinion, the area is uppity. It's very arrogant, uppity, material driven, status driven. Not my thing, personally, me, but it's free country. But anyways, moving on to our next one here, and we're done rabbit holing. This one goes to Jenna, last name Tolls once again, who puts in a 10 and says, "I love lamp." Oh, I'm glad to hear that.
Hey, we're glad to hear that. We're glad to hear you love the lambs. And so with that, we're going to grab another one.
And this one goes to Ani Pantera, who puts in a 10 and said, "How long do y'all think it'll be until we have a World War III? And also, I always go by this saying when people say war isn't needed, sometimes war is needed in order for there to be a peace."
And I would agree. I definitely agree with that, Oni Pantera. And I would have to say that we're still probably a good ways. I don't want to say that we're in World War III until it actually happens. So I'm pretty much always going to say that we're a good ways away, because I don't want to be like that guy who's like, "Oh my God, the doomsday bombers are flying," like every day. So it's still a good ways away. I'd say at least a couple of years away from now. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and this one goes to Ninja Machinist, who puts in a 10. And they said, "Russia should think about their air defense performance in Iran, don't you think?"
Oh yeah, like they should. Their air defense performs poorly across the board at this point. It really is starting to show that all that supposed money and research that the Russians put into their air defense systems, it's not there. Like, the performance isn't there, and they really didn't put that much money into the air defense systems. It was really exaggerated. But with that, a big thanks to you once again for support. I hope that has addressed that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Gary Bott, who puts in a 10. And Gary said, "Do you think the attack on Ukraine is just a smokescreen for Russian real plans? And all my friends here in Kyiv think so. And what is your opinion?"
I would have to say, and let me make sure. Let's see. It's just a I would say possibly so. I think that Ukraine is more so the stepping stone, like more so like the Anschluss of Austria, or the annexation of Czechoslovakia was for the Germans' grander plans. I feel like that's the kind of stepping stone Ukraine was supposed to fill, although it's become a lot more complicated and in-depth for the Russians to achieve that first stepping stone. But yes, I would generally agree. That's how I viewed it. Ukraine is just a stepping stone for the rest of Eastern Europe. And so with that, a big thanks to you once again. Hope that has addressed that well. And we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to none other than Timothy Swag. And Timothy put in a 10 and said, "Pickaxe Mountain was already reported on a couple years ago, and it should have been known to the intel community. And actually, I'm surprised that you were surprised, because I already knew about it."
And I got to say, a big thanks to you for the support, Timothy Swag. And I'd also have to say, it is interesting that it wasn't known by the intelligence community, because we generally look and read at what the intelligence communities have said in the past, like the Congressional Research Service, the CRS, and stuff about nuclear sites. They never mentioned Pickaxe Mountain once, and that's why I've never talked about it before. That's why no one's ever talked about it before. But now it's just being brought out as like, oh yeah, there's this thing right next to Natanz that's an underground facility. And it's like, well, this would have been important to know back when we conducted Midnight Hammer, in my opinion. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. A big thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to none other than, well, I'll scroll back up, Hokey Redneck once again, who puts in a 10. And he said, "Did you see the attack on the tankers of the RAF base? Red paint."
Let's see. I didn't see the attack on the tankers of the RAF base. I unfortunately had to declare ignorance on that currently. But I do thank you for helping this channel to keep on running, Hoagie Redneck. Now, we'll try to look into that and see if we can get some answers, at least the best we can. And so a big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, I've just got to weigh in. Rental car guys, if someone doesn't seem unlikable, one, I personally have to say on behalf of the person you're claiming that to, I find that to be greatly offensive. I'm really not happy about that kind of statement. Two, why in the world are you here then? If one of the hosts seems unlikable, why are you watching this show? that would seem to not really make a lot of sense. Usually people watch something because they like something, not because they dislike the people presenting it. So if you could give me an answer to that question, I'd be very interested to know psychologically how's that working for you to dislike a host, but then also be watching the show at the same time. So if you'd like to circle back and give me an answer to that, I'd find that to be interesting. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to Trevor A, who puts in a 10. And Trevor said, what about Taiwan? And China wants to move on Taiwan seemingly sooner than later. And this may be a larger plot by our adversaries to stretch the USA in attention span and resources. And what do you think?
I would say that I don't think it's a plot to stretch our resources. I truly do think that all of these things are just kind of the perfect storm at the same time coming all together to create what we're seeing. Because the Iran-Israel thing has been going on for decades. The Russia-Ukraine conflict has been going on for over a decade. And the China-Taiwan situation has been going on for 70 to 80 years. They've just all been unresolved, but they're all reaching their head at the same time. I would say that it doesn't seem like a grand concerted plan. It just kind of seems much like World War II. All of the things are lining up at the exact same place at the exact same time to create the situation we're seeing right now. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. A big thanks once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Nathan, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Nathan, for that support. He said, I would buy some merch. And Nathan, I think at this point, there's a lot of people that are telling me we need merch. Honestly, the only thing holding us back right now is there is a bit of a bottleneck behind the scenes. Because sadly, we don't have much time to do the merch. And also, we do have some big life things coming up in the background that we got to sort of like organize for as well and plan for. So the merch is going to be a little ways off, sadly. It's going to be probably either way at the end of this year or maybe at the beginning of next year, I'll be honest with you, because we really don't have the time to do it properly right this second. And we want to make sure we do it right. So it will be a bit off, but a lot of people are asking for it. But Enforcer, what say you?
Oh, get in line. I'm just kidding with you. But there are so many people, Nathan, that are actually saying that they'd love to have some merch. We are going to try our damnedest to get out some merch here eventually because so many people are killing, well, not killing, they're dying for some merch. And we want to make sure that we get some out to y'all eventually. It's just that it's going to have to be probably sometime at the beginning of next year because we have to move the Enforcer HQ. And hopefully with the movement of the HQ, we are able to get some room to be able to actually conduct the merchandising again. So a big thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that well. And we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Avora77, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Avora, as well, for that support. And we also have a $10 super chat from Exploited, who said, if you look up schizophrenia, that is Putin and Stalin and Hitler. Honestly, schizophrenia, I'm not sure if that would really fit, in my opinion. I see your argument there, why you might think that. But let's see here. Let's pull up schizophrenia, because I'm kind of curious about this myself. So schizophrenia is a chronic brain disorder that disrupts a person's ability to think, feel, and behave clearly. It's characterized by psychotic symptoms like hallucinations, delusions, cognitive impairments, and negative symptoms like reduced motivation. I don't think that really describes Putin. Now, Hitler did have schizophrenia at the late stages of his time as the leader of Germany. He did have that. He displayed symptoms of it, at least according to what I've heard. But Putin at this point would more fit the profile of a psychopath. Maybe a narcissistic psychopath even, in my opinion at least. But I'm not a psychologist. That's just some random dude yapping what he thinks. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would generally have to say I'm not a psychologist either. I wouldn't really know, but maybe they are. Maybe they are. But I would say probably not schizophrenic because schizophrenics, from what I actually don't really know enough about schizophrenics to speak about them. I would say, though, he generally seems more like a psychopath or a sociopath, in my opinion. But that's just my layman sort of assessment. So take it with a grain of salt. But a big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep running. And we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to BVN, who puts in a 10 and said, legends. And thank you for that.
Hey, thank you for calling us legends. You're a legend for supporting this channel and helping us to make it possible. So with that, we're going to be getting another one.
And we have one from Octavian Timarasanu, who puts in a 10. And he said, people often call the Suwalki Gap NATO's weak point, but actually it's Russia's biggest vulnerability. And if Moscow tries something there, the Russian enclave will be Polish and Lithuanian overnight.
I would actually have to say it's a pretty significant risk for the Russians, especially considering that Kaliningrad is an exclave completely surrounded by NATO. They would have to operate with a great deal of speed and efficiency to actually close the Suwalki Gap and then create a supply corridor traveling through this area from Belarus to the area of the Suwalki Gap. it would be a little bit difficult for them to pull off. I'd actually agree. But still, it is a weak point for us, but it's also a weak point for them. It really depends on how those opening days of the conflict would play out to see whether it became a strong point or a weak point for NATO or a weak point for the Russians. But it could go either way. I certainly would agree. So a big thanks once again for the support, and we're on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Greg Carrier, who puts in a $25 donation. And thank you, Greg, as well, for that support. He said, thank you for the honest, common sense, plain, simple facts given on a non-political format and no clutter to sift through.
Hey, and I thank you for the kind words, Greg Carrier. And we love to know that we're able to give honest, common sense, plain, simple facts given on a non-political format. No clutter to sift through. No mess. No fuss. I got to thank you massively for the support, Greg Carrier, and helping us keep this thing rolling, because we try our best to do that every night, and we're glad to know that we are one of the forefront voices of news on the internet these days. And so a big thanks to you once again, and we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Austin Walker, who puts in a 10. And Austin said, I'm new to y'all's channel and great coverage, and also great to have you, by the way.
Hey.
He said, if World War III pops off this year, what countries do you think side with each other? I think China, Iran, and Russia versus U.S., U.S. allies, and NATO, and what y'all's take? I would say add one more country, add one more country to the list, though. China, Iran, Russia, add North Korea. Believe it or not, North Korea is shaping up to be I wouldn't say a world power, obviously. They're not a world power, but they are a regional power. So that they are wielding, in my opinion, as much firepower as Iran is wielding at this point. So between Iran and North Korea, I would say personally, in my assessment, they're about neck and neck right now. So add them to your list, and I would say you're dead on. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that that's dead on. I'd also agree with Matthew that North Korea needs to be added in. But beyond that, that's pretty much the exact lay of the land that we would see at the moment in World War III if it did happen. And so a big thanks to you once again, and we're on to the next one.
And our next one is a $5 support from Andrew Honeycutt. He said, is it possible to use a computer virus to attack facilities that are hard to reach like Israel did before making the Iranian centrifuges self-destruct? And LSA.
Actually, the answer to that's yes. We could do it again. It's just that viruses like the Stuxnet are really hard to produce, and they're one-time uses, because once you use it, you immediately could create a defense to another attack like it. So you would have to use those sparingly. We have very few of those. Those are our cyber weapons, and I do understand that the Space Force is in possession of quite a large number of those, but I haven't heard of any of them being deployed against anyone soon. So maybe we could possibly use one of them, but once again, we are wasting a precious exploit that we know of that we would never be able to use again in a situation that might really need it even more than now. So we would have to see how it works, but technically we could, Andrew Honeycutt. And a big thanks to you once again, and we're on to the next one.
I think the biggest bottleneck with the cyber attack idea, the cyber warfare idea for the centrifuges, is Stuxnet was brought in through a physical means to the network. So it was brought in on some type of device, and it infected the network in Natanz, I believe it was. But the problem is, though, the Iranians are now aware of how that worked, and they've probably closed a lot of security gaps. So that way it's very hard to get that done this time, because it's a closed network at these facilities, to my knowledge. It's not like connected to the internet, because they're trying to prevent anybody from gaining remote access to their network. So that way they can't infect it with that bug from a distance. So they're going to force people to have to go physically to the facility to infect it with the virus. So that's the hardest part, is getting it in. I believe the CIA and also the intel agencies, they probably have like preloaded viruses ready to go, but delivery is the hardest part. And that was the hardest part with the Stuxnet, was simply finding a way to get it in. So that's my opinion on it. But jumping into our next one here, this one goes to Jeffrey Walker, who puts in a 5 and said, thank y'all.
And thank you, Jeffrey Walker, for enjoying the show. And a big thanks to you once again, and we're on to the next one.
And we got a 5 from Charlestown Schultekan, who said, it will not just be Russia. The new axis will be Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, Pakistan, and the communist South American countries.
I would have to say I wouldn't consider Pakistan to be in that group off the bat. I also, let's see here. Let's see, Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. Those are damn well good guarantees right there. I would agree with that. But communist South American countries, I think they're more scared of Papa USA, or as the NATO Secretary General called him, Daddy. I think they're more scared of Daddy than many would believe. Because don't you think that empanada eating Maduro down there in Caracas is scared to shit of the U.S. going down there and actually taking care of him? Because have y'all seen how incompetent the Venezuelan government has been recently under Maduro? I mean, the guy literally runs Venezuela like Ceausescu ran Romania back in the day. We could go down there and deal with the Venezuelans. Lickety split. The Brazilians guaranteed to be neutral. Like they're a part of BRICS, they're not going to be involved in that heat. Like I promise you that. and also, there really is no other communist countries I can think of in South America that would join in. Pretty much South America generally remains neutral, and I have a feeling that Venezuela would be like a little child hiding under a desk from like the Terminator, wandering around outside the ruins of the building where the desk was once inside of. They would not want any of that smoke from America. So I generally think the South American countries wouldn't join in. Pakistan would probably be a little neutral, and then Daddy would be out there beating the shit out of everyone else with the allies for the large part. So I hope that does address that well. Also, by the way, folks, I got to tell y'all, the NATO Secretary General definitely did call the president Daddy today. I mean, like, there was literally like an audio clip of him where he said that. He was like, "Oh, Daddy, just got to go down there and teach them a lesson." I was like, did he just really say that? And then later he said, "I did not call him Daddy." He's like, he did.
That was wild.
Yeah, that was wild. I've never heard anything like that. Y'all got to go watch the clip of that. It was actually hilarious. It was like, honestly, like backtracking all of it was not the move, because it was like the equivalent for the Secretary General of a Bushism. It's like, just admit that it happened, it's just like own it and be like, well, like whatever. Because Bush used to do such goofy things. Hey, you just own it and everyone would forget about it. Like, he would be like, "I think man and fish can coexist peacefully." He would say something like that, and then you just own it, and then people would forget about it because it was goofy. Yeah, but he just owned it. He never strayed away from it. Like, I didn't say that. He would just, yeah, well, whatever, and then everyone would be like, okay, like, I guess that's all right then. But
I never heard Bush pull a Diddy though. Quite like that's the other NATO guy sounded like Diddy out there a little bit.
Yeah, honestly, dude, that whole clip was hilarious, dude. Right when he said that, like, it didn't matter the context. I was like, oh my god, this is hilarious as hell to me. But anyways, it's as you all know, I see some people like, no, he didn't say that. He said it was an analogy. No, he called him Daddy because the president was filling the role of the daddy in the hypothetical scenario. So he did call him that. I mean, that's just how English works. But anyways, we're on to the next one.
All right, so our next one goes to Ani Pantera once again, who puts in a 5 and said, "I've been here since that first night that Russia invaded, but I also want to know if y'all have been to my home state of North Carolina."
Yeah,
and yes,
we
we
actually
have.
have
We've
been.
been through driving through there. I don't think we stopped though. I think we just sort of drove through on the
No,
way
we
to
stopped.
DC one time. Oh, we did. Where we stopped?
Remember Biltmore? We went to Biltmore one time.
Oh yeah. I forgot. Damn, I forgot Biltmore was there in North Carolina there for a second. Yeah, we actually did stop in Asheville, I think it is, and Biltmore is right there next to it. Yeah.
Yeah, we went through Asheville, Biltmore Village, all that stuff. We've been through North Carolina before a couple of times, actually, on the way to Washington D.C. or heading to Biltmore. So we actually have been through your home state a couple of times, actually. Charlestown, Shotokan. Actually, I'm sorry, Bradley Hall. Wait, hang on. Where the hell did it go, Matthew?
Only Pantera. I didn't put it in the spreadsheet.
Oh my goodness. I do thank you for support, though. I just got it all mixed up and wrong. But I do thank you for support. And yes, we actually have been through your home state. So big thanks to you for the support. I hope that does address that well. And fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice. Look, you fool me once, you can't fool me again. But anyways, we're on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here goes to Bradley Hall, who puts in a $5 donation. And thank you very much, Bradley, for that support as well. He said, Russia basically lost a battle of attrition with Ukraine, and do we honestly think they have the capability of taking on NATO?
No, I don't think they have a capability of taking on NATO at all. But it wouldn't stop them from trying, because the Nazis never had a chance of taking on the Allies, but they still tried and then failed. But a big thanks to you once again. I hope that has addressed that well. And we're on to the next one.
Also, by the way, I see people making a recommendation for merch, by the way. I won't name them off because obviously I don't want to say it until we have like something like actually like ironed out with them or something. But I see the recommendation you are making for maybe outsourcing our merch to a pretty good company. So we might look into that, maybe, and see what can happen with that. Of course, we'd have to see exactly how that would work with them, but that maybe is an idea. If they can do it right, though, I got to make sure it's done right, because so far I've had really good quality and good results with the merch. I've been like the one running the like quality end of the merch store, and we really take that serious. Like, we make sure the quality is always really good on the merch, and we don't want to fall short. And I'm always a little bit leery about outsourcing stuff without knowing if it's going to be done right. So we'll have to see. But jumping into our next one here, this one goes to Azuros Blaze, who puts in a 5. He said, Iran hasn't built a nuke for over 20 years, and now they have a reason. And I blame every warhawk for pushing Iran to having a reason now, and good job.
It doesn't matter. They still don't have a reason, and they're not going to get one. The international diplomacy world doesn't work on, okay, it's fair now, they can have one. We bombed them like a couple of times. No, it doesn't work like that. They are not getting one. We'll bomb them again. The first bombing is just a lesson. Like, the first bombing is a glimpse, a message, an oracle from the future that this will happen again if they keep trying. So that'll be my answer to you, because that's not how the world works. We don't just sit. This isn't a movie where they sit there and go, "You tried to beat me down, but I survived," and then we go, "Oh, damn it, the bully didn't win." Like, no, that's not how it works. We bomb them again. So, like, that's just the basic principle of how the world really works. So with that, a big thanks to you once again, and we're on to the next one.
And also, we have one from Cell, who puts in a 5. And he said, Russia has used a bunch of outdated weapons on Ukraine. And do you believe they've been doing this intentionally to keep us underestimating them?
They've actually used their finest weapons on Ukraine. They haven't been using their oldest and their worst. They've literally used everything that is the most modern and advanced weapon system in Russia. They've used the T-90Ms. They've used the T-90As. They've used the T-72B3s. They used the T-80B VMs. Just to name their best main battle tanks they had in service. They used all of those, and a lot of those have been destroyed in Ukraine. They have also used all of their Kamaz supply trucks, all of their Ural supply trucks. They've pretty much run out of those. They're using Ladas and Buhankas now for most of their transport. They use their Ka-52s. A lot of those got shot down. They used their Mi-28s. A lot of those got shot down. They've used their finest fighter aircraft, the Su-35, shot down. They've used their finest stealth drone. It actually ran out of control and got shot down by the Russians themselves over Ukraine, so that way it just didn't fly all the way into Ukraine and land somewhere where the Ukrainians could salvage the parts and learn how the drone worked. They have used their finest missiles. Hell, they've even fired an Oreshnik IRBM at the Ukrainians, which is one of their finest modern intermediate range ballistic missiles, at least according to their own definition, on the Ukrainians. They've used literally the best equipment they have in every category. Hell, they even were using the finest in their navy. The flagship of the Black Sea Fleet, the Moskva, was sunk in the very opening months of the conflict, which was the best ship, the literal flagship of that fleet, meaning that it's the finest, most well-equipped vessel in that fleet in the Russian Navy, and it was destroyed in the opening months of the conflict. And a multitude of some of Russia's most advanced ships in the Black Sea Fleet have also been destroyed since then, including a Kilo-class submarine, the Rostov-on-Don, in a dry dock in Sevastopol. So I would generally say they aren't holding back their best equipment. They've been using it, and this is the best that Russia can do, even with their best equipment. So I hope that does address it the best I can, but we're certainly not underestimating them at this point. This is truly Russia at its finest, and they suck. It's just like equipment-wise, training-wise, everything, they suck. And so with that, a big thanks to you once again, and we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to John Arthur, who puts in a 5. He said, Tomahawk versus this thing, which is cheaper? Firepower versus firepower?
Well, actually, the H-22 Foxbat is more efficient, because a Tomahawk, I believe, costs about, let me actually go make sure I get the number correct. I believe it's actually about a $1.5 million missile. Actually, I was kind of close. The domestic variant is actually about $2 million, so it wasn't far off. The H-22 Foxbats only cost about $150,000 a piece, and if you were to take the explosive yield in a Tomahawk, it's about 3 H-22 Foxbats, and it's also way more the cost. So, at least in terms of cost efficiency, several H-22 Foxbats are more efficient, at least for the monetary reasons, than a Tomahawk. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. A big thanks to you once again for support, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Kate Brown, who puts in a 5. And Kate said, big thanks to the Enforcers for being thorough and keeping us informed. And thank you for the kind words as well. And then she said, I've been hooked since I found you guys a few weeks ago.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, Cape Brown. And thank you for being hooked and enjoying the show. We try and be as thorough as we can. And I'm glad to know that we were able to keep being thorough even right now. We've been thorough for years, and we will continue to be thorough and continue to get the news to all of y'all. So huge thanks to you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and this one goes to GBD Guy, who puts in a 5. He said, what about the Russian nukes off our coast that can allegedly penetrate our anti-missile systems? And earlier, you said we could easily take out Russia.
I would have to say a lot of Russian equipment is generally overhyped. Because I also want to point out to everyone that the Iranians technically had, leading into the bombing operation we did on the Iranians, a radar so strong and so powerful it could pierce through the stealth coating on the F-35s and the B-2 bombers and expose them at large to the great Iranian air defenses that would shoot them down with air defense fire. And the reality of the matter is that they didn't even know that those bombers came into Iran. They didn't even know that the facilities had really been bombed until those aircraft were well out of their airspace by that point. So that's quite clearly showing that the Iranians lied, and the Russians also lie a lot as well. They said, the K-52, it's a freaking tank. This helicopter cannot be shot down. It's just too strong. And then like 50 of them have been shot down out of about the 100 that are in service. So 1 out of every 2 Ka-52s at this point in the war have been shot down. And that's about the same thing with everything else the Russians have. It's on paper good, but in reality it's terrible because the implementation was poor or the technology didn't really exist. So they make up for that with lying about everything. So I generally say that at least from what I know, at least from what I could say, the Russian nukes off our coast that could penetrate our anti-missile systems, what about them? I mean, it's like at the same time, we also have nuclear weapons on board our submarines that could strike anywhere in Russia, and the Russians couldn't shoot those down. So it's a mutually assured destruction standoff at that point. If they want to try and launch a nuke, they can expect to all get killed. And, I don't want to make it sound like we relish in that fact, but at that point, we probably end up killing all of them gladly, at least here in America, because they're going to end up killing about 100 million Americans off the bat. So that's generally how it would work. But I hope that answers that well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to AC-130 once again, who puts in the 5. He said, Russian American, I still can't get over how this real world war made my Russian Tarkov character broke overnight. And rubles to dollars is crazy once you see it.
Well, thank you for the support. And I got to say, that's a very interesting thing to point out. I've heard that Escape from Tarkov has been overrun with hackers. The last time I ever got on, which was years ago, it had been, at least for the couple of rounds I played, I lost everything in the game and was broke running around with a macro off. So I never played the game again, but that's actually pretty interesting though. I gotta thank you for support and sharing that, because that's actually pretty funny and unexpected, at least on my end. But a big thanks to you once again, and we're on to the next one.
Also, by the way, I just saw the best merch idea I've ever seen in my life from Sergeant Sagi in the live chat. He said, I think the Enforcers should bring out some replica model merch. A replica burning a Russian train, a model of a T-90 with a removable turret. Honestly, if I could pull that off, sadly, I don't have the manufacturing experience to pull that off. That would take a lot of effort to figure that out, because it took a pretty good bit of effort just to figure out how to run just a normal merch store with T-shirts and all the other merch we ran as well. That took a lot of effort on that front, setting up the distribution and everything for that. But if I could figure out how to get that done and actually make really good quality models and stuff like that, I would 100% do that. Sadly, though, if we did that, I think we'd have to actually hire somebody or get somebody involved that knew what they were doing, because that sounds like it might be above my pay grade quite a bit. But that would be epic. I would say I would probably be hoarding that myself, actually for my model case. Actually, that would be such a cool idea. I tell you what, that's such a good idea. It makes me want to actually do it. But sadly, though, I don't have the time. We need a third person at this point to pull that off. But very good idea, though. But anyways, jumping into our next one here. This one goes to LSA Sergeant Figment, who puts in a 2. He said, LSA, hit the like button, and that's an order.
And that is an order, folks. Hit the like button. We've actually gotten up to 7,000 likes tonight. Hopefully, we can get even higher. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Jake Robinson, who puts in a 2 and said, thanks for keeping us updated. And also, we got a 2 from Plazat as well.
And a big thanks to both of y'all. And thank you for the support and join this channel. And we're going to grab the next ones.
And we got a 2 from KZ, who said, why is Israel allowed to have nukes? And thank you.
They technically aren't allowed to have nukes because officially they don't have them. We know that they have them, but officially they don't. So that's kind of how it works. It's stupid, yes, I know. But technically they don't have them. But we know that they do. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And we've got a 2 from Avora77 who said, God bless the USA, and thank you both for the news.
And a big thanks to you for enjoying the news. And of course, long live the Republic. And we're on to the next one.
And we have a 2 from Keith Rosier who said, thank you guys, and I just subbed, and very good info.
Hey, and thank you for the support, Keith Rosier, and thank you for enjoying our channel and subscribing here recently. We've actually gotten up to 470,300 subscribers, so very nice to have all of y'all here brand new. So big thanks to you once again, and we're on to the next one.
And we have a 2 from Trashcan Randy. He said, look at Carmel, Indiana.
I'm sure this is be rough. Carmel, Indiana, these places are not known. Oh, what's this? Oh, this is north in Indianapolis. Isn't this where Johnny Quest is from? Or at least that guy with the white hair from Johnny Quest. Isn't this where he's from? Let's take a gander.
Are you talking about Mike Pence?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'll thought you meant like the real deal. Oh, this is suburb heaven here. Look at those nice. Get off my lawn.
Oh, look, this was blurred out for some reason. Yeah, this is an affluent place where you can get it blurred out. You know, you gotta go through a lot of work. This is actually really nice, actually. I thank you for sharing this with us. This is far better than anything you see in Russia. Hell, this is like the affluent areas of Moscow, actually, compared to what they have in Russia. So big thanks to you once again for support, Trashcan Randy, and helping us to keep this thing rolling. Keeping it rolling. Keep calm and keep it rolling. And with that, we are on to the last super chat of the night. So what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to RNR91111 News. He said Pine Bluff, Arkansas is really bad.
Pine Bluff? Pine Bluff, Arkansas? Nonsense. Nothing could be bad in Arkansas. That would be ridiculous. Let's go down to Pine Bluff and take a gander. It couldn't be that bad.
It's grid layout.
It's gridded. I mean, that's not too bad. Like, this is like Montgomery, Alabama, really. Oh, actually, yeah, it's actually a little rough. Stop and shop, or stop and shot, depending on what neighborhood this is. I think it might be a stop and shot, or a shot and shop, or something like that. But yeah, this is a rougher part of America for sure. You can tell. Yeah, this is rough. Yeah, you can tell. The crime rates and the property values here. The crime rate's high. The property values are low. For sure. I could guarantee you that. Like, look at that. Like, there's abandoned buildings everywhere through here. Thank you for sharing this one. This is actually one of the rougher spots in America, I'd say. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And as far as Bentonville, Arkansas, Boba Vesquez, I could not tell you if that's a good place or not. I personally have never been in Arkansas, actually. I've just heard a lot about Arkansas. But I'm sure there's some nice places in there. Like, every state isn't terrible through and through. Like, anyone who tells you an entire state's terrible, like if someone tells you all of Texas is terrible or all of California is terrible, I can promise you most of those people have never been there, or they've drank so much political Kool-Aid of the Republican or Democrat variety that literally anywhere that just votes majority for the other party that's not theirs, they just act like it's a hellhole. So like generally you can find a nice place anywhere in the country. It just really depends on where you want to be. So I'm sure there's some nice places in Arkansas, no doubt. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we're going to be actually grabbing our Morse code decoders of the night and our live chats. But due to time constraints, we're only going to be grabbing 3 live chats and the Morse code decoders. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right. So our Morse code decoders of the night were Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Mason Miami, Joni Dog, Norm Pritchett, and Arabelle Garbo. They said the Morse for tonight says the U.S. and Europe are teaming up to deal with our enemies is a great move, and long live the LSA.
And ding, 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 ding. That is the sound of money, and y'all got that dead on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night, and I got to congratulate y'all for getting that correct once again in the Lee Spring Army Signal Corps, because y'all continue to get that correct time and time again every single day of every single week, and we are massively appreciative that y'all are able to get that Morse code message correct. It's a really cool skill and a talent that y'all have. And so with that, we're on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Judy from the live chat, who said, do you think Putin will be stopped on his own by his own people before he can act on NATO?
That's a good question. If the economy collapses within the next 2 years, you betcha. If the economy is able to survive for the next 2 years, they probably won't. So that would generally be my assessment. It really depends on what the future holds for the Russians economically. And so with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Live Animal, who said, how important is the upcoming BRICS summit where China will make a move against the U.S. dollar?
it's not going to be that important. The Chinese, like the BRICS currency thing is a fantasy. It's a fantasy that the BRICS countries have as like their wet dream. The Indians hate the Chinese hate the Indians. Nobody does anything with Brazil. South Africa might as well not even be a member. They just host the meetings and that's about it. Russia absolutely distrusts China to an extreme, to the point that they internally view China still as an enemy. The whole alliance is just horrendously off. No one would ever agree, yeah, with all of us pretty much hating each other in a way, let's all go make this currency. Like, no one's absolutely going to do that ever. And also the Chinese renminbi is just not strong enough on its own, and is also manipulated so much by the Chinese, which also makes it incredibly weak and unpredictable, that no one would ever want to use the Chinese renminbi as their reserve currency. So I would generally have to say that the Chinese move against the dollar will not happen. It will fail. No one wants to be stuck in the Chinese foreign currency exchange, because it's pretty much being stuck to the Chinese, and everyone kind of distrusts the Chinese enough that they wouldn't want to do that. And so with that, I hope that has addressed that well. And also, by the way, if I sounded a little frustrated there, it's not because I'm frustrated with the question. It's a great question, by the way. The reason why I sounded like that is because I just find the BRICS propaganda to be so stupid. It's such a disservice that stuff even gets pushed around this country, because it has good folks like you thinking that there's an actual threat from the Chinese. The Chinese are a joke, like in every single way. But they're still a threat. It's still a significant threat. I want to put that out there. But beyond that, they are a joke in almost every other way. Like the Belt and Road program, look at that failure. They're still trying to make that work, and they were supposed to have that tied up by right now, and they're still trying to just get it off the ground. But with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the last person to put in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Gulf of Matt LSA, and I love that username right there. He said, did you guys hear the claim that the reason there was no evidence of damage at the Fordow nuclear facility in Iran was because the B-2 pilot dropped the mop down a ventilation shaft?
I heard that claim. I don't really know if that would even be true or not, because I don't see any ventilation shafts anywhere when we were looking at the satellite pictures. And also, there were so many other mops that were dropped that cratered the area that there's no way that there could have been no damage to Fordow, because there was at least 7 mops dropped on Fordow in the underground facility. So that would be really, really hard. I mean, incredibly hard to say that there was no damage because one went down a ventilation pipe, because there's at least another 6 that actually did burrow into the facility and did hit it. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And a big thanks to you so much once again for watching this channel and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. So with that, it is time for us to round out this news for the night. I got to thank you all so much once again for enjoying this channel tonight, and of course, being here at the end. There are 11,000 people here live as we're rounding out the stream right now, and I got to say that it's been an honor and a privilege to get to share with all of y'all the breaking news happening around the world. We had a peak viewership tonight of 27.2 thousand people, and 250,000 people have watched this stream before it ended. A huge thanks to all of y'all so much once again for watching, and we will see you all tomorrow at some time. Matthew will be making a short war video if there's enough news to make one, and of course, we will be guaranteed running a stream tomorrow. Whether it's a breaking news one or a normal stream like we had tonight, we'll just have to wait and see. But with that, a big thanks to all of y'all once again for watching, and we will see you all tomorrow. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukrainian, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And with that, folks, thank you all once again for another great stream and joining us once again tonight on day 1218 of the news. And a huge shout out to all 255,000 people that were here by the end of the stream. A ton of people once again, and we appreciate every single one of the viewers for being here and watching the show. And also be sure to join us tomorrow for that short war video midday if there is one that comes out, depending on the breaking news. And also be sure to join us again tomorrow for the next stream at 10 p.m. Eastern at our usual time. But with that, thank you all once again. And with that, bye-bye for now.